Welcome back. It's the Big Blue Banter, New York Giants football podcast. I'm Dan Schneider, joined as always by my co-host, Nick Filato. Today's a special day in life of Nick Filato, someone who I know so quite clearly wants to be heard and wants to be seen. And it's his birthday today. So let's shout him out. Let's wish him a happy birthday. He's the type that really wants all the attention on the birthday. I think he once referred to it as a birthday month, not a birthday. Wants the celebration to really last throughout the month. He would prefer if we all collectively got together and sang the birthday song to him. A little happy birthday to you, but we're not going to do that right now. We'll leave it to me, the curmudgeon, to bring up the Larry David Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. That's now 2 Curb references in the last 2 days. One of my favorite seasons and one of my favorite episodes when he's at Ben Stiller's birthday party and Larry David won't sing the birthday song. Everyone else in the room is singing it. And Cheryl's like, why? And then he catches a glance with Ben Stiller, who's looking at him. And he's so pissed off. He's not singing. He's like, Cheryl's like, why didn't you just sing the birthday song? He's like, I don't sing the birthday song. And I'm with Larry. The birthday song freaking sucks. If you're over the age of 8, you shouldn't be wanting the birthday song to be sung to you. And you shouldn't be singing the birthday song. And if I'm ever at a dinner at any point with my friends or family, it's a shout out to any of them and a warning to some degree. If you start to sing the birthday song to me, I will walk out of that restaurant. And I can't claim originality on that joke. Shout out Brett Childs. I don't know if you're listening to this podcast. You listen to a bunch of them, but he's the one who first told me that. He's warned his family multiple times. Don't you dare sing that song to me. I will walk out of the restaurant. So happy birthday, Nick. How you doing today, bud?
I'm doing okay. I'd rather, I think, watch film and get all my work done, but I have to entertain the girlfriend. She wants to take me out later, and I have to do it. So beforehand, we're going to get this podcast done, and I'm excited to dive into this film.
Not surprised at all to hear that you'd rather be breaking down game film and working than celebrating your birthday tonight, Nick. But I guess that's how it is, baby. And then, you know what? I can't blame you for that. You know, screw it. Who wants to? There's more fun things to do, like watch Giants football.
Right now, with the Giants in the playoffs,
Yes.
I mean, this is my first time covering the team, and they're actually in the playoffs. I'm super excited about what the New York Giants are doing. Very enthusiastic to break this down and then look forward to the Philadelphia game.
I understand. I totally understand. Let's talk about this game today. The Giants Vikings on the defensive side of the ball. We're going to break down the film shortly, but before we get into the film, we want to talk some big picture things as they relate to this game specifically. And this was a really interesting game in a lot of ways. It was a tendency breaking game for Wink Martindale, defensive coordinator. It was a matchup specific game plan from Wink Martindale. Here's the quick rundown of all the things he did differently than normal in this game. I actually just posted it to Twitter, so I'll just break it down a little bit. First of all, they blitzed on just 22.5% of the plays. That is super low for a team that I believe were we 1 or 2 in blitz rate this year.
We were 1.
Number 1 in blitz rate goes down to 22.5%. Middle of the field open, 65%. That just means split safeties on 65%. Obviously, you know the Giants have been a team that likes to keep that middle of the field closed with one safety, single high, a lot of cover one. In this game, 65% of the snaps were not in cover one. 65% of the snaps. It's actually a lot of quarters, but it was split safeties. They ran quarter personnel package, and that's 7 defensive backs on the field, which is insane, by the way. Earlier, you're thinking about it from a schematic standpoint. You have 4 defensive linemen on the field. Everyone else is defensive back. I don't know if that'll hold true throughout Martindale's tenure, if he gets better linebackers, but for now, that's the plan, at least for this game. And that was on 37.5% of the snaps, which was also a season high for the Giants. And then finally, on that something that just stood out to me, on that final drive, and in relation to that last point, every single snap in that final defensive stand had 7 defensive backs on the field. So just a really unique, interesting game plan from Wink Martindale. It wasn't perfect. Things didn't go great for this defense, but they came up big in big spots, and ultimately that played a big role in helping them win this football game.
It played a huge role, and I feel like just putting that umbrella over the top of the explosive passing attack of the Vikings while getting multiple sets of eyes on Justin Jefferson was one reason why the Giants stifled the Vikings throughout the majority of this game. I think Kevin O'Connell expected man coverage. He expected to see middle of the field closed. Now, we saw a lot of cover 6 in that first matchup against the Minnesota Vikings. We didn't see as much cover 6. We didn't want to expose half the field to one safety responsibility. We saw a lot more quarters. So that means each deep player, each cornerback, both those safeties have a deep fourth. If it's a spot drop type of zone, a lot of match type of principles can go into quarters and palms types of coverages. I felt like the Giants deviating from the middle of the field closed look was one reason why they had so much success. Like you said, man, the Giants only ran cover 1 10.7% of the time. They ran it twice on the last 2 plays, but throughout the season, the Giants ran cover 1 29.2% of the snaps, which I believe was, I think, the second highest in the NFL. They ran quarters coverage 15.9%. In this game, they ran quarters 48.2%. Now, that's not the personnel grouping. That's quarter. I know it can get a little bit confusing, but that's not the personnel grouping. Quarter is when you have 7 defensive backs on the field or more, which, yes, Wink Martindale had more sometimes. I feel like
He had
3
8 of
snaps.
them.
Yes, he had 8 defensive backs on the field with just O'Shane Zimenez, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Dexter Lawrence as the defensive linemen, non-defensive backs. And it was interesting, man, because when you look at how Kevin O'Connell adjusted, he did it on the first drive, and then he did it at the top of the second half. They had success when they did this. Because if you're Kevin O'Connell and you're the Vikings, you want Wink Martindale to get the hell out of sub packages, force base personnel, get 4 linebackers out there, including 2 edge rushers. So 2 linebackers, 2 true linebackers, and then use your fullback, CJ Ham, his physicality, his presence out there is somewhat of a mismatch for the Giants because it gets them into a personnel grouping the Giants typically do not like to use. If it was up to Wink Martindale, he wouldn't put his base personnel package out there. But in the second half, after there were some adjustments, we saw Kevin O'Connell switch to 21 personnel with CJ Ham out there. Giants responded with base. So you have less defensive backs, less speed out there. And Kevin O'Connell schemed up a really nice post-wheel combo to Adam Thielen that created one of the, I think, 3 explosive plays that were hit by the Minnesota Vikings. And the way they did that was by forcing base out there and then putting both the wide receivers on one side and then the tight end and then CJ Ham acting as essentially a tight end on the other side, which kicked Jarrad Davis over the top of the number 2 wide receiver, which was Adam Thielen. That completed for over 20 yards on a wheel route. That was just an excellent designed play by Kevin O'Connell, but I felt like it was one of the best adjustments that O'Connell made throughout this entire game was just switching the personnel packages because it didn't seem like they were really anticipating the Giants to be so soft. And even though the Giants gave up some stuff on the ground, Dan, it wasn't all that much. And it was also because the Giants were really just allocating a lot of eyes, like say the nickel and the apex. They were really looking at Justin Jefferson if he was aligned outside or if he was aligned in the slot. So it seemed like the Giants had a lighter box to run into. Plus they were using a lot of quarter and a lot of lighter personnel packages.
Yeah, it was a really interesting chess match to see for the reasons you said. I mean, look, even when the Vikings went to 12 personnel, Kevin O'Connell's probably sitting there thinking like, all right, we're in 12, got 2 tight ends on the field. He's going to have to put those linebackers on the field, right? And no, wrong. He wasn't going to. He really didn't adjust much. Like Wink Martindale had his mindset of what he's going to do. Finally, like you said, he had to, once they went to, a heavier personnel, at some point you have to make an adjustment. And at that point, Kevin O'Connell, like you broke down, was able to kind of take advantage of it. And the personnel that the Giants have right now, when they're in heavier personnel packages on defense, which we know we've went over all season, it's not good. Obviously, I thought this was, I'll get your thoughts on it as we go through. I thought it was okay at best game from Jarrad Davis. That's not a player who I'm like looking at on this tape and being like, holy crap, we might have found another Isaiah Hodgins. Like this is like, as like, I know why, I understand why they gave him a chance to play over McFadden, for example, but it's not what I want yet. And there was like one really good play I liked, and we'll go over it. And I'm just like, this is what I've been looking for from linebackers all year. Like shoot that freaking gap and get your body in there and make a play and he hit the legs of a ball carrier and he got tripped up. We'll go over it, but overall, not a great game. I didn't think Jalen Smith actually thought had a better game and has been a little bit better as of late. But yeah, I mean, that's the goal. The goal is to get those guys on the field if you're an opposing offense. And so I'll be really interested to see what Sirianni does with 2 weeks to prepare for this Giants defense. Like if he does go to that, because I'm very, very worried, Nick, about the Eagles run game. Like you said, the Giants kind of dared the Vikings to run the ball. And they're just like, screw it, run the ball. We'll give you all these light fronts. And like you said, given that context, the Vikings didn't really run the ball that well. They didn't run the ball that poorly, but they didn't run the ball that well in that context. The Eagles, on the other hand, I don't know if that's going to work the same way.
I don't know if it's going to work, unfortunately, either. We'll have to wait and see. And even when the Giants were in cover 1, there were so many eyes still on Justin Jefferson because that buzz defender, because the Giants aligned a lot in pre-snap cover 2 looks, and they executed a lot of, or I should say 2 high shell looks, right? And there were times where they would transition to cover 1. Julian Love would just buzz eyes directly on Justin Jefferson. If you're running inside, bro, we have you. And you're going to be inside out. Giants were trail over top, inside out on 18 this entire game. And that's one reason why we didn't hear his name quite too often, especially in the second half.
100%. A few more takeaways before we get to the film that I wanted to bring up. First one being, the Giants don't win this game, in my opinion, without Adoree Jackson, Xavier McKinney on the field. Xavier McKinney, from the standpoint of just the communication, the difference in how that secondary ran with him and Love back there. And in addition to that, 2 really great coverage plays he made. The one on Jefferson over the middle, and then the deep post to Jefferson. Adoree Jackson, similar. Look, we talked all last matchup against the Vikings on film, and then in the lead up of like what killed the Giants over and over was those post corner routes with Jefferson and just any of those outbreaking routes with Jefferson. When you have a Dory Jackson making those speed turns and like looking so smooth in coverage and transitioning, you can't really hit the outs. And did the Vikings hit a single outbreaking throw to Jefferson this game or any receiver? Really, I think they might have hit one to Thielen, not including obviously the wheel routes, but like just those outbreaking routes. And I'm not sure they did. And that's another testament to Adoree Jackson. And then finally in this, I just feel like it's every game, man. But Dexter Lawrence, dude, it's just insane how good of a game he had in this game. And you look at it, and there were so many plays I saw on tape where I'm just like, he's pressuring the quarterback again and again and again. He's winning this matchup so fast against these offensive linemen. It's crazy to see. Those were the three things that really stood out to me.
Yeah, you nailed it. I mean, Xavier McKinney and Adoree Jackson make the biggest difference that you would ever imagine on the back end. You're going to see it consistently throughout this film. And in Dexter Lawrence, I mean, I don't know. We've been showering this guy with love all season. Every single bit of it is warranted because he's having a phenomenal year, all pro year. And honestly, it's not crazy to say he's the best defensive lineman in the league. I don't think that's crazy
this season,
to say.
He certainly is. Yeah, I think that's fair to say this season. It's hard to then like compare edges and tackles, but like as far as interior goes, I think it's fair to say, especially with Donald having an injured season or whatever. But
bro, he had two of his biggest plays in the game at the end on the final drive. This is a 345-pound interior defensive lineman playing more than 50 snaps in a playoff game. And he's making those types of plays with that type of energy and effort that late in the fourth quarter.
And
it's anomalous. It's anomalous, bro. Nobody does that.
Some of these too, it's like they don't show up in the box score. Like the final play of the game where Cousins checks down to Hawkinson over there on the right side. They don't show up in the box score, dude, but that was literally only a play the Giants could make because Dexter Lawrence got that pressure. Because if we have just a random defensive tackle in there and he's just not moving that pocket at all, and Cousins has the chance to survey back to the left, he does kind of have Osborne breaking in there, and he's probably going to hit that pass. Like it's probably just going to be a completion. Drive rolls on. We may lose that game. But because he had Dexter pushing that pocket and collapsing it, he has to come quicker in his mind, at least. He said it after the game. He's like, they asked him, why did you check down? Because obviously you knew that was going to be a question for Kirk. Yeah. And he's like, I'll be honest with you, I did not want to take a sack. I didn't want to lose the game on a fourth down sack. And he said with Dexter, I don't think he mentioned Dexter, but he's like, the pressure was coming in and I knew I had to get the ball out or I was going to take a fourth down sack to lose a game. And he's like, I figured it's better to try to, hit Hawkinson there. Maybe he can make a move in that one-on-one matchup. It's better than taking a sack. But if Dexter isn't there, he doesn't have to even worry about taking the sacks. He moves back to his left and hits Osborne. So, it is what it is. But Dexter made such a big impact in this game again.
Gigantic impact. And that's been consistent the entire season.
Let's roll it through now, Nick, and let's turn on the tape. We're going to start with the first drive of the game for the Vikings. This was a fairly deflating drive for us as fans. It was a 12-play, 75-yard drive, a lot of quick game, a lot of quick hitting stuff, and it just felt like the Vikings were able to do what they kind of wanted in this one. Giants start this game out already breaking a tendency with a quarters look here. You can see the split safeties before the snap there. That's what we mean by that. And Vikings take advantage of the leverage and just fire it over to Jefferson on a quick hitter inbreaker. But it's a good example, by the way, Nick, in my opinion, at least, of what's to come, because you can see how fast Xavier McKinney, I believe, who the safety is over there, reacts to this and has his eyes just the entire time on Jefferson.
Yeah, this is a great example, I think, of things that are to come later in the game. But this is 11 personnel. The Giants respond with nickel to start the game. So maybe they were expecting run, but you see shotgun, 11 personnel against nickel. Look, a lot of the times later in the game when the Vikings are going to be in 11 personnel, they are not out there in a nickel package. They're going to be out there in dime or quarter.
Yeah, exactly. They're like you said, there's going to be plays like that come up, and we'll see it. Second play right after that, it's another 1st and 10 situation here. This is a great vision cut by Dalvin Cook, kind of flashes his ability here, just finds the cutback lane and picks up 9 here. You could see Jihad Ward sets the edge pretty hard here. Thought he had a play later in the game where he did a really good job of that, but you just got to give credit here to Dalvin Cook because I think this was excellent vision.
Great 2 cuts off the backside of a double Y set. 12 personnel. Giants remain in the nickel package. They bring Xavier McKinney down into the box, and he flows hard to the original play side. And I think Dalvin Cook just does a really good job noticing that there's nothing to Jihad Ward's side, that Dexter Lawrence is kind of bench pressing Garrett Bradbury. So he just does 2 jump cuts to get outside of Kayvon Thibodeau. And then this ends up going for a 9-yard gain. And right now, we're all watching this football game, Dan. We're starting to be like, oh, geez, okay. It's only first 2 plays, but it doesn't look great so far.
And here you have a 2nd and 1 here. Look at this box. There's only really 6 Giants defender, maybe a 7th if you include that guy coming off the edge in the box. And you could see from the end zone angle when they run this play, it looks like a massive hole is about to open up for Dalvin Cook to just exploit and rip into the secondary. And then you can see within a second of that hole looking so big, both Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams close that gap and make the play. Look, they convert the first down here with a 2-yard gain on the 2nd and 1, but this is a really good individual play by both Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence.
Yep, back to the double Y set. Giants come out in nickel. It's 12 personnel. And like you said, just great individual effort from both Lawrence and Lenny, man. Like, look at Lenny just split this double team and just toss Darisaw aside, falls to his knees, still makes his tackle. And then it's just insane how much strength you get from Dexter Lawrence. He just throws Garrett Bradbury to the ground. Remember when we were all worried about Garrett Bradbury? Not worried, but we were like, that's definitely going to be better than a third stringer. It was, but it didn't matter. Dexter Lawrence still had the game that he had.
I completely agree with that. And we'll see how that translates to Kelsey, because Kelsey, unfortunately, is like an insanely tough matchup, the toughest they'll get all year from this point on. But anyway, it sets up a 1st and 10 here. Now the Vikings come out in 21 personnel. That means they bring on their fullback here. It's a little different than the Giants 21 personnel, which is Pony. They use a fullback, CJ Ham here. And like Nick said a little bit earlier in the preview, what's that going to do? It's going to force the Giants into their base defense here with heavier personnel package. And out of that base defense, the Vikings are going to run play action, and they're going to find a 10-yard gain to Justin Jefferson.
And if you're looking on YouTube right now, you could see base. There's going to be 3 interior defensive linemen, essentially like a tight front. Only Leonard Williams is more outside, so it's not really tight. He's on the 5 technique spot over number 86, and with the 2 edge rushers off their ass, and then the 2 linebackers. The Giants are going to creep Julian Love down into the box, but this is the only time the Giants are going to respond with base personnel is when the Vikings transition to 21. And you can see that play action is right open over the middle of the field. We can see it a little bit better on the sideline angle to Justin Jefferson. Just looked like the safeties early on in this game, they weren't as quick to kind of identify the fact that Justin Jefferson was really, really good coming over the middle of the field, but that closes up pretty fast later on in the game.
Now we have a 1st and 10 situation here. Another 21 personnel look. That means CJ Ham is on the field. And we're going to get Ward with a great play here, I thought, Jihad Ward. And this was a play when you watch from the end zone angle, you kind of see how good of a play it was to fight off the tight end and tackle Dalvin Cook here. At first, it kind of feels like this could have been a big play for the Vikings in the run game when I watched it on film, Nick, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on it. But when Jihad Ward plays it that well, it's hard to make a play on this, because if he gets washed down by that tight end or doesn't come off that block, this could have been a big play.
Yeah, I think Xavier McKinney would have filled, and it probably wouldn't have been a huge game, but still, you don't even want to put your safety, your alley defender, your last line of defense in that type of situation. And I also felt like Jihad Ward might have got a little bit of a face mask here, which is it me, or has that happened to Jihad Ward about 10 times this season? I think it was only called once, but I'm not 100% certain if he actually got the face mask. It looks like it might be a little bit lower. But look at CJ Ham, though, how he picks up that play side linebacker, Gerard Davis, to help spring what could have been a huge run. But like you said, Jihad Ward just did a really good job getting off Johnny Munt's block.
Yep. And that's going to set up a 2nd and 7 situation here. Once again, 21 personnel, base from the Giants. And you're going to get a really nice pressure here if you're watching from the end zone angle from Dexter Lawrence. But the end result of this play is a 13-yard gain. Good, really good catch, I thought, by Adam Thielen on a ball that kind of died on him. But I did think when I watched, 2 things I noticed on this play, Nick, was one, what I said before, Dexter Lawrence, just watch him push, go right in for that pressure. And then from the other angle, the sideline angle, I thought this was a good microcosm, at least to me, of what the Giants are doing to take away Justin Jefferson in this game. Just take a look. He's at the bottom of the screen. Take a look at the focus on Jefferson here. Look at how many white jerseys are around him.
Yeah, you have Adoree Jackson who's going to play outside leverage on Justin Jefferson in a reduced set inside the numbers. He's going to fan outside to the bottom of the numbers, and then you have Adoree Jackson's eyes go right to Jefferson. If Jefferson goes inside, or not Adoree Jackson, I'm sorry, Xavier McKinney's eyes. If Jefferson goes inside, Xavier McKinney is going to assume that. Also, Adoree Jackson has help over the top from Xavier McKinney, but when you allocate that many players towards one superstar, that means someone's going to be one-on-one. And you could see how Xavier McKinney is taken off the spot because Jefferson, and that opens up the backside dig to Adam Thielen.
Yeah, so that sets up a first down. Vikings staying in 21 here. Giants staying in base. I'm just going to run a stick route to Jefferson for 5 yards. A lot of quick game on this early drive. This will set up a 2nd and 5.
You can also see they're using tempo. The ref is just backing away. Giants are just getting set up. And also, you see CJ Ham basically operating as a tight end on the line of scrimmage with a single back formation. Justin Jefferson finds the space between the linebacker and Adoree Jackson. Quick, easy pass completion. Move the sticks.
It is cool to watch. I mean, this isn't like a great play from the defense, but it is, and it was evident on the last play as well when Jefferson ran that corner route, just how smooth Jackson move, even after the injury, how smooth he moves on the field, how quick his click and close is. It's just great to watch. You can tell there's a difference watching him out there than any other cornerback they have.
Oh, 100%. We're going to see it all throughout the game too. And it's not even stuff like you said that pops up on the box score, but it's so obvious when you're watching the all 22, just where he is relative to his assignment and how he's not really giving the wide receiver an ability to work into his blind spot because how smooth he is with his footwork and his positioning.
Exactly. So that'll set up here right after that play, an encroachment by Dexter Lawrence that we didn't have. So we're going to go to the next play after that. 1st and 10, we get our first design screen. Every team that plays the Giants is going to run at least one screen against them. There's literally no reason not to. They have not played them well all year. But this one I thought, at least I put in my notes, Nick, I'm curious to get your thought. I like the way Jalen Smith played this one, 54 here. I thought he did a good job of preventing this from being a much bigger play for the Vikings as Cook's kind of trying to let the block set up for himself. But ultimately, it does end up going for 6 yards.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at this point on YouTube, you stop it. Jalen Smith has 67 kind of working in his direction. So he has to kind of set to the inside to force Dalvin Cook back outside. But 67's kicking out that outside block. So now it's going to behoove a Jalen Smith to get outside and locate Dalvin Cook. And that's not an easy task. And he does. And he ends up making the tackle. Yeah, they gained 6 yards on this screen, but you're right. He stayed square and he was patient. And then he made the play. Wasn't too over eager. Didn't drink all the monsters before he went into the tackle point, which we've seen several times from Jalen Smith. I think what you said at the top of the show was correct about Jalen Smith. He's playing pretty, I would say, solid overall football right now.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so here we have a 1st and 10 set up here, or I'm sorry, 2nd and 4 set up here. They're going to run a little dive play for Dalvin Cook. And you're going to see playoff football here, playoff intensity from Julian Love. Watch him fill this run and help stop it for a 2-yard gain.
Yeah, Julian Love, he's been down in the box a lot this game so far. And you can see him sift through. Look at where his eyes are. His eyes are looking through this double team block, and he's trying to find out exactly where Dalvin Cook is. And once Dalvin Cook presents himself, because Dalvin Cook does a really good job kind of making, that's a really nice jump cut, making Leonard Williams miss in the backfield. He just fills sticks, and then a bunch of New York Giants white jerseys rally and tackle.
And that sets up a 3rd and 2 here. They're going to actually go to 11 personnel for this one. You're going to use out of a bunch. This was a cool play, I thought, from O'Connell. Out of a bunch, he motions Justin Jefferson, which obviously is going to take a lot of attention his way. And that just leaves this open, easy conversion here on a little out route for Hawkinson.
Yeah, let's talk about the Vikings offensive coach who does a very good job. I feel like Kirk Cousins didn't play as bad as I think a lot of people are saying just because he didn't win the game, right?
Wow, people are saying he played bad off of that, Nick?
I think people are giving Cousins shit because Cousins is Kirk Cousins and he doesn't win the big game, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely a narrative. But I felt like he played fine in this game, right? They didn't win, but that's going to happen. You got to give credit to the New York Giants, right? And Kevin O'Connell, I felt like other than the really, really just horrendous call that we're going to go over on the next drive, did a pretty damn good job calling offense. And I think this is a really good microcosm of that. Because you're right, you have Justin Jefferson outside. Now, Adoree Jackson is going to follow him. That also tips to Kevin O'Connell that the Giants are shadowing Justin Jefferson with Adoree Jackson in man coverage. But it also, now you have a stack without Adoree Jackson in that area. So what is it going to do? It's going to open up that out route for TJ Hawkinson. You just use KJ Osborne to remove Darnay Holmes. How the hell is Landon Collins going to be able to work from the hash all the way to TJ Hawkinson towards the sidelines when you're rolling Kirk Cousins in that direction? He's not, right? Like, that's a very difficult ask. And you have Darnay Holmes who has to work through KJ Osborne to get there. So that's just a really good play design in the red zone by Kevin O'Connell.
Completely agree. And you're going to see a similar scenario on this next play that was originally
that was a 4-2 as well, bro. So it's a really high leverage situation.
And that I felt like he did really good in the high leverage situations, the 4th and 2 as well later in the game, which we'll go over. But now it sets up this 1st and goal situation. And it's like a similar scenario here, like great design by O'Connell. You get Jefferson moving in motion late on this play. And it's like, okay, well, how the hell is Adoree Jackson going to sift through all of those those second level defenders to get over the top of this? Of course, he's not going to be able to. That's an impossible task. I actually thought Adoree Jackson did a really good job with catch up speed here to even make this play on this. Well, he has to go literally around the second level defenders through all that trash. So either way, as good as a play as Adoree made on this, it's almost impossible to cover. And Jefferson almost scores on this. It's ultimately called back at the 1 yard line.
It's called back, but you're 100% right. I felt like Adoree Jackson, the closing burst and the athletic ability is on full display with this specific play. And also just like how Kevin O'Connell uses 12 personnel here, and he aligns Irv Smith and then the other tight end that might be Munt, but it might be TJ Hawkinson, whatever, on each side of the line of scrimmage just to force so many bodies into the box because they're not handing the football off to Dalvin Cook. So now Adoree Jackson has to sift through even more bodies in that area to get outside to the field to account for Justin Jefferson.
And now we're going to set up right after that. Call back. We set up a 1st and goal, and we're just going to get an easy quarterback sneak touchdown here. These are just, again, really hard to stop until if the NFL decides to change these rules on it. Look, you got a guy, the Giants do this too. Every team does this now. You just have a guy lined up behind the quarterback. He just pushes him in if he needs to. Sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. But I really don't know how you're supposed to stop these plays.
Nah, neither do I. That's really difficult, bro.
I feel like the NFL is going to have to do something about it. There's just no way to stop this shit. But anyway, touchdown Vikings. They go up 7-0 in this game. And the second drive comes up, and the Giants actually have their best drive of the game, or one of their 2 best defensive series of the game. It's a 3 and out, which is always great to see, but it is aided, as Nick said a little bit earlier, by just arguably one of the dumbest play calls of the season by any coach. It's just, we'll go over it, but I just don't understand why you call it. And even if you do call a trick play there, like why how is that to design? Like, how is that your design? Like they could have caught the Giants, like if they designed a really cool trick play, because the Giants, no one's expecting trick play bomb on 3rd and 1 or trick play explosive play on 3rd and 1, but that just wasn't it. And we'll see it soon. But it starts off here. Giants in a quarters look, as you can see before the snap with those 4 defensive backs in where they're aligned. And what are they going to do? Well, they're just going to tack the leverage here and throw a quick out to Jefferson. But you can see Adoree Jackson closes really fast on this. I think every other defensive back for the Giants would have allowed a little bit of yak here. Adoree Jackson, 0 yak.
Yeah, I felt like he was really smooth, kind of clicking and closing and just getting downhill onto Justin Jefferson's hip to make this tackle. This is also one of the plays where the Giants do send an extra rusher. You see 5 guys end up coming. Don't really get there because it's his quick game. That forces Jalen Smith at the top of the screen to go from the middle of the field outside to TJ Hawkinson, which isn't necessarily a situation you want to be in, but that wasn't even looked at. And this was the play that Kirk Cousins should have looked at. Even pre-snap, if you watch, you see this is a field side stack from Osborne and Justin Jefferson. It's going to be difficult for Adoree Jackson if he goes into any sort of backpedal, which he's obviously going to do, to kind of get downhill towards Justin Jefferson. And just look at that too. It doesn't look like much when you're watching like this, but he is in that quarter turn, and watch how he just sets his feet and then just smoothly he angles his hips already into a spot in a manner that that's going to intercept Justin Jefferson's body, essentially. See that? Now Justin Jefferson looks up, Adoree Jackson's right in his face. That's solid technique right there from Adoree Jackson, and it's very smooth.
Yeah, I think you said that. I broke that down really well because there's about 5-6 yards of space before he makes that transition, and then he closes it down and turns it into 1 yard, really just 1 yard after the catch. So just really good stuff there. Those are the type of things you don't see in the box score, but you can see when you're watching the tape. And it's the reason why people like Nick and I are so high on a player like Adoree, because we watch the tape and it shows up often. So now we have a 2nd and 3 here. They're good. The Vikings are going to try to run a little screen here to the boundary here. Ultimately, they throw this little pass to Madison, and I thought this was one of the better plays of the day that went a little bit overlooked just because it was early in the game, and one of the best plays I've seen this season for me from Jalen Smith.
Jalen Smith and Darnay Holmes. Look, Darnay Holmes, the Vikings are going to run this same exact play later, and Darnay Holmes makes a gigantic play on Dalvin Cook in space that helped force, I think it was the field goal attempt instead of the touchdown that could have tied the football game up, if I'm not mistaken, right? Because remember when Darnay Holmes came down and it was a -4 yard or was a 4 yard loss for the Vikings. Here, he does the same thing and he attacks Adam Thielen, Darnay Holmes, and then he sets outside. Watch him set outside. You'll see it on the end zone angle if our homeboy actually does a good job, But that allows Jalen Smith to come down on Alexander Madison, who's getting boxed back to the inside. And you can see on the boundary side, there's a screen designed, but Kirk Cousins threw the flare instead. And it's going to be on Darnay Holmes to really force him back inside to those pursuit defenders. And Darnay Holmes does this so well. Look, we chastise and lambast Darnay Holmes for all of his issues in coverage and how he gets grabby and things of that nature. But in terms of operating near the line of scrimmage and sifting through these screens, he's one of the better Giants in that area. And you can even see here, he sets outside of Adam
Thielen. Giant in that area, right?
I think so. Yeah. And this is one huge play, like you said, that's going to be forgotten about, but it's going to happen later in the game as well. And that's going to prove to be gigantic towards the efforts of the New York Giants winning.
You see a nice pressure there from Leonard Williams too, from this one where he gets a nice hit on Cousins, and Cousins looks like kind of like a little bit of a acting job here from Cousins. I didn't even notice this on the first time. Look at that. Oh my God, I'm so hurt. Give me that flag.
I think he actually gets the push though too.
Yeah, but like he just collapses. Like, watch this collapse from him. That is not a hit that makes somebody collapse. I'm sorry.
I don't know. Leonard Williams is a big, strong guy.
I don't trust any of these quarterbacks anymore. This stuff.
Got trust issues with these quarterbacks, man.
I really do. Did you hear what Joey Bosa said after the Chargers game?
I think I saw it tweeted. He was just.
I feel so bad for that dude. He's literally never going to get another holding call called against him in his life. You can't do that. You got to hold your tongue because you know these refs are spiteful weirdos and they're going to probably take it out on him the rest of the way. That's my guesstimation on the situation. But anyway,
which play was he referring to specifically? I mean, you blew a 27. Wasn't it 27-0? Right. You blew that lead.
27-0. Only Brandon Staley can blow that lead.
Yes, that's a Brandon Staley thing. That's a specialty of the Chargers.
It's literally why I bet the Jags. I'm just like, I'm betting against Brandon Staley here. Yes, the Jags are the better quarterback. Yes, the Chargers are the better quarterback and the better team, but they have the so much worse coach. And it proved to be
Doug
true.
Peterson. Doug Peterson's a beast.
Yes, he is. All right, now we have a 3rd and 1 after this big play that we said was a big play for the reason we're about to find. On 3rd and 1, the Vikings decide, despite the fact that they just matriculated up and down the field on their first drive, they're pretty much doing the same here. Let's run a trick play here. And I still can't figure out what the design is on this trick play. I think, Nick, and I'm curious to get your take, I think the design was to throw back to Cousins the entire time with no Giant remaining in the area, and Cousins would then run for it for a while and slide. And they're like, we drew this up. It'll be like a 25-yard gain. The safety will eventually work back, but he'll slide. Other people think it was designed to Jefferson to throw downfield to Osborne, and he adjusted by seeing that Osborne wasn't open and the Giants didn't play and played it well, so he decided to throw back to Cousins. I don't believe that because I don't think there's any scenario where even if Jefferson did think this play was busted up, there was like a second part of the play where it's like, well, worst case scenario, let's throw back to Kirk Cousins and he'll run it. Like, I just think it was designed for Cousins the entire time. It's just such a bad play call. And it sucks because we're not knocking Kevin O'Connell. Like, this dude had a great game plan, both games against the Giants, had a ton of things, tendency breakers against Wink Martindale. It's not a great calls overall, situationally and game plan wise, but this was certainly not one of them.
I am just not sure what the hell he was thinking. I'm guessing he thought of Dory Jackson like he saw twice previously on the last drive, would follow Justin Jefferson,
right,
and then maybe Darnay Holmes would take KJ Osborne. But even so, why get cute in such a high leverage situation when you are having success with basically everything else that you're doing? Even the pitch back to Justin Jefferson, look, you have 1 yard that you need to gain, Dan. You pitch it back to Justin Jefferson, and now you have 6 yards you need to gain. Like, it just doesn't make any feasible sense whatsoever. But as you said, man, I think Kevin O'Connell is a really bright young coach. I think the future is bright for him in Minnesota. But man, I'm sure he wants this one back because this is just a dunce move.
Yeah, it was a really bad move, and it could have cost them the game in a lot of ways because every possession mattered in a shootout like this 31-24. It was that type of game. 55 points on the board is a lot these days in the NFL. But great news for the Giants because they punted on the next play after Cousins lost a bunch of yards here. Third drive, Giants starting to build a little bit of momentum here. It's a 5-play, 22-yard drive that once again ends in a punt. So that's back-to-back series. The Giants had a nice 2-series kind of run here where they forced punts. And this one was interesting because you had Justin Ellis on the field early on, and the Vikings went to 12 personnel. And it starts here with a double wide boundary run for Dalvin Cook. I think you'll see Xavier McKinney's impact here a little bit. I think he does a good job of playing this run and making sure it doesn't spring for anything bigger.
I agree. And I think this was a drive where the Vikings saw that 97 wasn't on the field and they were like, all right, we're just going to run the football. And they had success. They got a 4-yard rush here, an 11-yard run. They got a 7-yard rush a little bit later in the drive on a halfback draw. And it's because Dexter Lawrence isn't out there. He had a breather. So let's run the football. And you can see there's going to be some sort of impact due to that. And this is just a well-blocked play. And I feel like if you watch Xavier McKinney kind of coming downhill from his safety spot, staying square, getting his eyes on the rush runner, then working outside, because you have that contained defender, 37, Fabian Moreau, who's going up against TJ Hawkinson, because this is a double Y set. So now you have a tight end blocking a cornerback. And I feel like Fabian Moreau is doing a solid job just elongating that path. But then the cutback lane is there. Xavier McKinney is right there to fill, though.
Yep. Great breakdown of how they were able to stop that from being a big one. 2nd and 6. The Vikings find more success in the run game, though, on this one out of 12 personnel. Little hole opens up over the middle. It's an 11-yard gain. You can kind of see this, in my opinion, is, I would say, Nick, a solid microcosm of what I'm looking, why I'm so like gung-ho about upgrading these linebackers, dude. Like, I know like it's not the easy, whatever, like it's not the easiest job in the world to play linebacker, but it just looks so freaking easy for these offensive linemen to climb to the second level and just eliminate 2 linebackers on a play here. It's just that's the type of thing. This is the type of plays where I want a linebacker to be aggressive, beat that second level guy, and then get his body somewhere near the point of contact to make a stop, but hit the legs or something. It just looks way too easy.
It does look way too easy. And this is also some of the unsung, I feel like, effects that Dexter Lawrence has on the game. If that was Dexter Lawrence at the one technique, Garrett Bradbury engages him, and then he just closes that backside A gap, man. Like, absolutely eliminates it. And then the errors by these linebackers, if you want to call them that, because these are just well executed little combo blocks by 72 and 67, Ezra Cleveland and Ed Ingram. They just chip, don't even do too much. Ezra Cleveland gets a solid chip, I would say, on Leonard Williams. And then the linebackers are just a little bit slow to kind of come downhill, and that just allows them to easily get picked up, puts the safeties in a little bit of a bind. Jalen Smith ends up making the tackle, but still, this is a 7-yard rush on 1st and 10. That's a negative play for the defense.
Yeah, I actually think it was an 11-yard run on the 2nd and 6, right?
Oh yes, this was an 11-yard run. That's my mistake. Next rush.
No, all good. And I agree with you. It's not like a mistake by the linebacker. It's just like these are the types of plays where you want a linebacker to rise to the occasion here and make a play, like, and not be so easily taken out of the play here. Especially 57 here, I thought was really slow and then just got himself taken out of the play. But it is what it is. This is where we're at with the linebackers. Unfortunately, there's no solution. This is what it is. That's why this dude is playing 7 defensive backs on the field for 37% of the snaps, or whatever, 35.7% of the snaps, like unheard of numbers. This is why. So there you go. 1st and 10 situation. This is actually a 7-yard run by Dalvin Cook. The Vikings now leaning on the run game here. I thought this was a pretty good, powerful run by Dalvin Cook here. You get the fake bubble screen to start. I don't think that really fools anyone. But eventually Jalen Smith makes the tackle here, but ultimately it's still a 7-yard gain.
I think Jalen Smith did an okay job too. He's going to step towards the line of scrimmage, and he's just trying to get his eyes on exactly what the hell's going on. He sees that this guard is about to climb up to him, and he sees that, or he might have known that Jarrad Davis wasn't going to be, or not Jarrad Davis, because this is a different personnel. Landon Collins was kind of blitzing. You see how this is going to be kind of a scrape and replace situation with Kayvon Thibodeau going inside of the double Y set, and then Landon Collins kind of coming outside. So Jalen Smith knew that, and he knew the only last line of defense now left was Xavier McKinney. So he positioned himself into that B gap and made this tackle. 7-yard gain still, but I felt like he, at least, you can kind of see where he's coming from through his eyes, right? You see him kind of process what exactly is going down in front of him, and then he made the play. A little bit late.
Yeah, it's actually a really good play by 54, I think. I think the bigger interesting factor here is like watching those 2 defensive tackles get displaced here, Ellis and Williams. And part of why Williams is because he's slanting down. That's part of the play call here. But it's something you brought up a little bit earlier with Dexter Lawrence and the noticeable difference this Giants defense has when he's off the field. Something I think about, and I'll be talking about this more in the offseason, Nick, and we'll be discussing it. But I gotta be honest with you, I'm gonna probably be in the minority here, but I'll be interested in upgrading our interior defensive line this offseason. Now, I have other ways of going about it. I don't need a 1st-round pick on one of these type of guys or anything like that. But to me, it's a much bigger need than anyone's talking about or anyone's really discussing or thinking about right now. The depth on the interior defensive line is bad. There was a couple reps later in the game where Ryder Anderson is just like thrown off the off right off the line. Like, it's just like when you see that, when Ellis is on the field and Ryder Anderson on the field, and just how much noticeably worse they are as a defense, you think like if we just get some more depth there, that will make a bigger difference than I think is people are talking about right now.
Agreed. And I also think Kayvon Thibodeau gets just kind of blasted by the double team here, put on the deck by the tackle. That's a difficult task. And you're also slanting inside. You're trying to penetrate and stop this rush. But yeah, Jalen Smith positions himself right there. And I'm not really opposed to what you're saying about the interior defensive line. We don't know what DJ Davidson is. And honestly, I don't really want to see Henry Mondo and Ryder Anderson out there for as many snaps as they played. Or, of course, Justin Ellis. Like, I like Justin Ellis because he's a veteran. He seems to be well respected. He knows the system.
Right.
But you don't want to see him out there because things like this happen, man. Like, he doesn't really add anything as a pass rusher, and he gets blown off the ball way too often.
Completely agree. And that sets up a 2nd and 3. I think you put it in the notes, and you're so right about this. One of the low-key, luckiest best plays for the Giants here, because the Vikings have a solution here. Irv Smith in the flat, and we just get a lucky drop here. And then, 2 plays later, they punt. That's 2 drives in a row that could have been scoring drives, but stupid mistakes by the Vikings prevented it here. And this is just a flat-out drop by Irv Smith.
Missed opportunities. And Irv Smith slows down, too. Like, watch. Irv Smith chips Jihad Ward, good job, releases, and you're going to see him kind of like slow down a little bit. And then he's like, oh, crap. And then he drops it. Like, he kind of slowed his route down just a tad bit. And even so, even if he didn't, like, this is still a very catchable play. And this is one of those plays, man, like those forgotten plays that lead to victories for the New York Giants. This is one of them, because if they convert here, we don't know how this drive results in. And just look at the top of the screen with Justin Jefferson, man. The Giants are just like, you're not beating us. Dory Jackson's impressed. He bails, assumes outside leverage, and then Xavier McKinney is right there to take the inside.
Exactly. And this is another example, like you just said, of the attention paid all game to Justin Jefferson. 3rd and 3 situation after this. Giants are able to get off the field here. You're going to see a situation here where a nice little twist call up front does free up some of Leonard Williams to pressure and force Kirk Cousins out of the pocket. But overall, great job on the back end here in coverage, I thought, by the Giants defense.
The Giants line Adoree Jackson up on the line of scrimmage, similar to what Jair Alexander did in week 17. And he presses and then sets outside and just kind of fans outside just a little bit, right? And just stays engaged. And you could see how the safety to that side is inside the hash. He has his eyes on what the hell is going on too. But we'll see from the end zone angle how Leonard Williams gets his pressure off of the twist from Dexter Lawrence kind of being that penetrator. Yeah, you can see actually the penetrator is Leonard Williams initially. He goes inside. He creates. So when we talk about the penetrator is the guy who's going to set the pick. And watch on 99 sets the pick on 65, who's engaged with Dexter Lawrence. He doesn't even know Leonard Williams is coming. The guard's like, okay, Leonard Williams is my guy. I got to block him. So now Leonard Williams is occupying 3 offensive linemen, and then Dexter Lawrence is going to loop around. So that's going to be Ed Ingram's responsibility. He's like, okay, I got to transition to Dexter Lawrence, but nobody assumes Leonard Williams. And that's what leads to this pressure. And might have led to the incomplete pass.
It did. And I also thought if Cousins processed this a little bit better, he did have TJ Hawkinson, and he's got to throw with anticipation, but Hawkinson wins this one-on-one, and Hawkinson's going to have a big play later on a stick and nod. But I thought he created a nice separation here. You just got to throw that football, in my opinion, if you're Kirk Cousins a little bit earlier.
That's not a design play, though. That's just Hawkinson extemporizing. I think at this moment, Hawkinson sees that the pressure is in, and then he's like, okay, I'm going to cut it back.
No, I'm not talking about on the corner part of it. I'm talking about just with that initial inside in release.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
like
right there.
Bang. Just throw that right there, and that's complete.
Yes, 100% agreed.
But that's something that Cousins missed on this one, thankfully for us, because it's led to a punt here. And that'll take us to the 4th drive of the game. This one actually was not a great one for the Giants defense. It was an 8-play, 75-yard drive for a touchdown by the Vikings here. I believe this was the one right before halftime, if I'm not wrong. And so it's kind of like a situation where the Giants had a 17-7 lead, and I felt like if they could just stop the Vikings here. I was talking about with my brother. Shout out to my brother, by the way, and Kara, his girlfriend. I went over to Brooklyn to watch the game with them. One funny thing about that experience was we ordered in food, and it was like supposed to be like the best fried chicken in the area, and it was fantastic. Let me just say this. But during the end, my brother didn't order it. He ordered Wingstop, which I told him was a terrible decision. Why would you order trash quality chicken when you can have good quality chicken? And I ended up being right. He's like, this sucked. He's like, I think it was just a bad Wingstop location. I'm like, no, dude, it's Wingstop. It's not that good. Like, it's trash wings. Like, You know what I mean? It's just like trash frozen wings. But anyway, the funny part of it was, and shout out to them both for hosting us. It was a great day all around. We watched the Arsenal game earlier in the day. But the funniest part to me was both my brother and I had the same exact mannerism and tendency. We ordered the food and it was dinner time when the Giants game was playing and we couldn't eat it because we were just so nervous. Like we weren't hungry at all. Like the food was just sitting there getting cold. We took like a bite each. Everyone else ate their dinner normally and fine. But for some reason, we just couldn't get ourselves to eat it. Like I tried to eat it at commercial breaks and so did he, but you're just so nervous. There's so much energy. You're just like, you can't do it. And so I just wanted to throw that out there because I thought it was pretty funny. I'm sure a lot of other Giants fans listening now experience the same thing. Like during a game like that, you can't eat anything. It doesn't matter what kind of spread you put out there, what you cooked, all your plans for like a good dinner and a good meal for the game. It ain't happening during that game like that.
Absolutely not. I didn't eat anything. I never would eat during Giants games. I can't sit there and eat. I typically don't eat breakfast until halftime of every Giant game, which isn't as late on the West Coast.
Right.
But I'll wake up early, I get all my prep done, and then I'm not eating breakfast. I can't eat during a game, dude. My attention dialed in.
Yeah. It's impossible, especially a game that matters like this one. You're just so nervous. But next drive, it's an 8-play, 75-yard drive. Again, I was really hoping they could hold them to 3 here. That's what my original point was coming off, because that just gives you such an advantage. But the Vikings were able to put 7 on the board here. It starts with a little zone run here, and the Giants play this one really well. One of the best run stops of the day for the Giants.
Yeah, 12 personnel, and the Giants are going to come out in their nickel package. And I think the linebackers do a very good job here. Now, Jarrad Davis kind of gets bitched a little bit towards the end, but initially, watch how he presents his chest into that A gap. And then you can see right as I pause it, Dalvin Cook is looking. He sees 57. He's like, all right, I'm going to bounce around. And then 54 is right there, puts his chest right into that A gap. So now Dalvin Cook needs to cut back. He cuts back right into Leonard Williams, who was that backside defender, just coming and shedding his blocker because Leonard Williams is an absolute beast. It's pretty good linebacking play to stop this shotgun zone run.
You put this one up on Twitter, I think, with a breakdown, Nick, or I saw it somewhere. Maybe it was the Big Blue U page. I'm not exactly sure. But I thought you did a great job breaking down there. And then again here, this is what you want from linebackers. This is exactly, both present themselves in each gap, and that gives Dalvin Cook nowhere to go. And by that point, the play is blown dead. And that's the type of stuff where if we could just find more consistency with the linebackers we eventually put in there next year, they're going to be a much better defense overall.
And that's going to lead to the 2nd and 9 that we're going to show right here. But this is a play where Garrett Bradbury's called for holding. You'll see it. He tackles Dexter Lawrence because Dexter Lawrence is Dexter Lawrence. And the Giants actually declined the penalty. What'd you think of that?
Both, I texted you literally right away after it. We both disagreed with this decline, and we both stand by it. I think you should always take the yards pretty much. And I think if they put them in the 2nd and 19 instead of the 3rd and 9, they actually would have likely gotten off the field here. But you'll never know. That's impossible to answer. But I think we both agreed that they should have taken the yards.
Yeah, it was a little odd. I'm not going to lie. A little bit odd. Giants did send a 5-man pressure, though, on the 2nd and 9. You can see Xavier McKinney step up. Dalvin Cook has to assume him. He doesn't really get great pressure, but we'll see from the end zone angle exactly what the hell Dexter Lawrence does. And then you could just see how Adoree Jackson has that smooth speed turn. This is what we're talking about. The bottom of the screen, you have that stack, right? Adoree Jackson's off the line of scrimmage, outside leverage, and he's going to fan. He's in a zone type of turn. And watch how he just turns. He turns. He's not going to allow Justin Jefferson to get into that blind spot. That's so smooth from a footwork standpoint and just I would say, poise and patience. There's no fright in Adoree Jackson right there going up against one of the best wide receivers. That's so smooth, dude.
Yeah, that's exactly what look at that. Wow. There's no space between him and the receiver after he makes that speed turn. That's good stuff. You just
the little steps, man. Like the little steps, like they don't.
The lack of wasted movement.
It's a lack of wasted movement, but it's also like, look, Justin Jefferson's going to attempt to work into this blind spot. You can see like how he's stepping to the outside right there, and watch how Adoree Jackson matches it every single time. And then once he goes into the turn, Adoree Jackson's like, all right, I'm just going to smoothly transition. I'm right on top of you, dude. That is excellent cornerback play, excellent execution from a technique standpoint in terms of his lower body mechanics from Adoree Jackson.
And to be fair, like I'm not trying to knock the dudes, but we just watched this Viking game a few weeks ago on Christmas Eve, and sorry to say, but Fabian Moreau and Nick McLeod weren't doing that, and they're not really able to do that from an athletic standpoint. So you can really see the difference in cornerback play, and it's a position that you and I are very high on in general in the NFL, Nick, and in this specific defensive system, we're even higher on it. If there's a first-round cornerback we like, we probably will have him atop our draft board. It's early to say, It's too early to say, but I know that. I can already tell that. And just it's a good example of like what you can have when you have cornerbacks who can play receivers like that on routes like that. You can see the difference. Like there's just nowhere to go with the football for Cousins on where he wants to go with it to Justin Jefferson there.
Dory Jackson is such a difference maker, but dude, I'm smiling over here and I'm kind of laughing. Watch the ref to the top right portion of the screen if you're watching on YouTube, and how much authority he throws this flag with once Dexter Lawrence is tackled. He's like, screw you. Like he just whips that thing in there, dude. He looks like he was throwing that with authority, man. He wanted everyone to know like that is a penalty.
Yeah, he just literally tackled a dude here. It's just insane watching Dexter Lawrence. How does this show up like 15 times a game? He has plays like this. It's just it's crazy to me. He just wasn't doing that early in his career, which is the weirdest part to me.
Dude, he has the ability to generate pressure like an elite edge rusher, only he does it on the inside. And we always talk about the importance of, like, look, this is a quarterback-driven league. You have to get them off their platform, and you have to create interior pressure. When you have edge rushers like Kayvon Thibodeau, who's only going to get better, who's going to grow, hopefully, right? And Azeez Ojulari, when he's healthy, those edge rushers can create a lot of pressure on the edge. When you have Dexter Lawrence coming through the A-gap, that is giving nightmares to these opposing quarterbacks, man. I absolutely love this, dude. And I love the fact that they picked up his fifth-year option and that he's more than likely going to be a Giant for years to come.
Yeah, he'll be a Giant for a long time. They're not going to let him go out. And it is a good example. Like there's two things at play here, just from an overall standpoint. One, kudos to Dave Gettleman. He took him at 17th overall. He was right about him. It took him a little while to become the player he is, but now that he is that player and he's still so young, he's going to be, I don't think there's going to be any kind of drop off. But it also goes to what we always said. Like with past years, when we criticized that pick and when we criticized the Leonard Williams trade because of what they gave up for an impending free agent, it was always the same thing. It was like, if he was going to play like this, there never would have been criticism. What we wanted was we just valued so highly the defensive tackles, the interior guys who can get pressure on a consistent basis versus the guys who are great against the run, but maybe can't get pressure on a consistent basis. Now he's both. Now he's great against the run and he's getting that consistent pressure on a consistent basis. So kudos to Gettleman because he always knew that would happen. But when he wasn't, like, in the past, we've seen all the tape. Yeah, there were examples of him having reps like that one for sure, but they were nowhere near as consistent as they've been on a weekly basis. Not even close.
It was coaching too. It was alignment, right? And I liked how the previous coaching staff would use him as the 4-eye when they were in base and they were in tight, because it was such a bitch to block that guy if you're a guard in the running game. But we didn't see nearly enough Dexter Lawrence over the nose or as a one shade in passing situations. And I think that was one of the worst things that Patrick Graham, who we respect, did. Now this coaching staff comes in and they're like, all right, you are a one, you are a nose, we're going to put you there. And then Andre Patterson came in and he was like, dude, I've coached some great defensive linemen. Dexter Lawrence, you could be that. Use your length, trust your technique. And then we just see him use his length combined with that power. And then I really think he's just, grown, I would say, and developed a much more efficient way to use his hands. I don't think he was wild last year. I think he was solid with his hand usage, but this season, it's so quick, man, how he lands that swim move and gets to the half man. It's so effective. And
just like
he's
that.
Really just like who?
No, I was just saying it's just like that. It happens so fast when you're watching the film.
I thought you said just like Dak. I was like,
no, Dak with the swim moves using his hands. No, but you're right. It is. There's been so much of an evolution in his game, in my opinion. And it's not my opinion. It's the obvious if you watch the tape. And that's kudos, though, still to Dave Gettleman. I got to give him his props when it's due.
The whole Dave Gettleman thing, because I see it on Twitter. People are like, oh, it's like, dude, you can give Dave Gettleman credit for drafting some of the players that he selected who are turning into stars, while also criticizing some of the mistakes, the many mistakes that he made in terms of allocating money to free agents that did not pan out, right? Like, I think those two things could certainly coexist. Look, Dave Gettleman didn't do the best job as a general manager, but he does deserve credit for the selection specifically of Dexter Lawrence and Xavier McKinney, who weren't top
and
six.
Daniel Jones.
And Daniel Jones. Yes, of course.
Yeah. But with all that said, you just have to make sure you consider the context. The context is no GM over the span of those 4 years had more draft capital than him. He had the most by far. The other context is, you should hit on top 6 picks. Andrew Thomas, 4th overall. Daniel Jones.
I think Julian Love's one too. We should probably throw in there too.
Yeah, that's a good solid pick, but I don't, that's not a defining pick for me. I think there's a lot of Julian Loves on a lot of different rosters. Dexter Lawrence at 17 is the pick for me. That's the one where it's 16 teams passed on him, and he's one of the best players in the NFL. But you have to keep that context in mind. These are top 6 picks when it comes to, Thomas, Jones, Barkley, for example. You shouldn't miss on top 6 picks. It's not that good of a thing when you hit on it, in my opinion, at least. Quarterback being the exception, which is why I mentioned him in the previous before. But also you got to keep in context that he had total bust picks too in the first round, right? Like, first of all, he never really hit a day 2 or day 3 pick. Those are all basically busts besides Xavier McKinney. But then he also threw out 2 first-round picks. Who'd you say?
Julian Love too.
Yeah, and Julian Love. But other than that, that's 4 draft classes, and we can only really name a couple names there. But other than that, you also have Kadarius Toney, a total bust of a first-round pick, and DeAndre Baker, a total bust of a first-round pick, which you also then use a 3rd and 4th-round pick to trade up to get. So these are just insanely bad moves right there, in addition to the lack of 2 3-day hits. So it has to all be put in context, in addition to obviously what he did to Joe Shane this year with the salary cap, right? Like, if we had James Bradbury, what would we look like? If we were able to do what you said on yesterday's podcast, resign Evan Ingram to a 1-year, $11 million deal because we just had so much cap space like we should have had, what would this team look like? And will we have a better chance to win the Super Bowl right now with those players in the roster? The answer is yes, definitively yes. And so that has to be factored in as well.
100%. You're not wrong at all. And I think a lot of those moves, and we're not turning this into a Dave Gettleman podcast, but looking back on it, hindsight's always 2020. But a lot of those moves were made out of desperation. They were made to compete in the immediate, and they didn't have the long-term view in mind. And that's why the New York Giants were put into this position where Joe Shane was kind of hamstrung, and he had to sign a bunch of guys that it's really amazing to think this coaching staff is getting the most out of. And that kind of brings me back to one of the primary reasons why I believe, and a lot of people believe, Brian Daboll was the coach of the year. It was that situation and how he's maximizing all of these talents. And I really think Mike Kafka and Wink Martindale also deserve the tip. They don't get awards, but they're also doing a great job coordinating their units. And Joe Shane, look, he's not going to win executive of the year, but he should certainly be in the conversation.
Agreed entirely. When you get hamstrung the way he was hamstrung with the roster and then the cap space they had, and the injuries they had, he should be in the conversation. Context is important there as well. So he won't win it, I don't think, but I agree with you on that. But let's get back into the game. I don't know how it's fun. Sometimes, look, there's a lot to talk about with the Giants right now, so it's fine to go off track a little bit. So I think right here, we're on a 2nd and 9 situation here after that hold, or no, that we're rerunning the hold on.
So it's going to be a 3rd and 9 situation.
Yeah, 3rd and 9 after the decline.
Because they denied the decline. Yep.
And so 3rd and 9 here. This is the first look that Nick referenced earlier. Count them up. 8 defensive backs on the field. It's just wild to me to see a coordinator do that. But he's got an 8 defensive back look. This one eventually is figured out by the Vikings here. They blow the coverage on Hawkinson, who leaks and releases. This is something that I've noticed has killed the Giants on tape all year on defense. These chip and release situations, usually it's the tight end. It just feels like, based on how often the Giants are blitzing or the coverages they're playing in the back end, these guys are just kind of a lot of the time left completely uncounted for. I guess this is Jefferson's responsibility. I'm not exactly sure, but and it is his responsibility. Then Nick, you can confirm that, and he just doesn't do a great job with it.
Yeah, this is on Tony Jefferson. It's a blown coverage. Jason Pinnock is blitzing. Landon Collins looks like he is blitzing and has the assignment of Dalvin Cook. So that's what Landon Collins is doing. You can see that maybe a little bit better from the end zone copy, which I'll show in a second. But it's just on Tony Jefferson being a little bit late to realize exactly what TJ Hawkinson is doing over the middle of the field. I'm wondering if Tony Jefferson had any sort of, if there was any sort of, not like a call, but maybe like a something that he had in his mind to protect the middle of the field from Justin Jefferson. He's not really looking in that direction. You can see Justin Jefferson just has safety over the top. Xavier McKinney comes down into the middle of the field just in case if he's running a post. You have Adoree Jackson to the outside, kind of bracketing that side of the field. So there's a lot of eyes over there, but I just don't really 100% know why Tony Jefferson allowed TJ Hawkinson to go that way. Maybe it was supposed to be Landon Collins. That doesn't really make sense because Landon Collins has his eyes on Dalvin Cook, but it was just a blown coverage. And I think that was one of the few blown coverages in this game from the New York Giants.
Yeah. And then you're going to see it happen at times. It's just how we are right now, where we're at right now. So now we have
late to react. I'm trying to because right here, his stripe is right on TJ Hawkinson. And that's when he sets his feet and goes. But TJ Hawkinson way too good of an athlete.
He's already in his break. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that's who he's looking in that direction even before the snap. So it's just a little bit odd that happened.
It is odd, but that's, let's be honest, Tony Jefferson's not likely in their long-term plans from a personnel standpoint anyway. So it's another situation of a guy they had to bring on because of some of the cuts they had to make and where they're at from a roster situation standpoint. But it sets up a 1st and 10 here, 11 personnel. You get just a phenomenal play in the run game from Dexter Lawrence, lined up right over the center. 2-yard loss here. This was awesome to see.
Oh yeah, Dexter Lawrence just beat Garrett Bradbury back.
Look at
And this is a
Bradbury after the play, by the way, Nick.
oh yeah, I'm sure he's
He
going to
looks
be
so
despondent.
dejected.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Look at that.
man, let's pause that. Not to revel in his demise, but that's what offensive linemen look like when they go up against Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah,
Right?
dude.
Yeah, it's just pure. Oh my God, what the hell am I doing? And that's hey, Garrett Bradbury, you're a good football player. It's just Dexter Lawrence is an elite football player. This is a difficult block too. He has to get around to the outside hip of Dexter Lawrence and create that seal block. And when you're going up against someone as strong as Dexter Lawrence, good luck on that type of play. And this is also, man, a boundary open side run away from TJ Hawkinson that they're attempting to do. And you're asking your center to make that block. It's not the easiest assignment.
No, not easy at all. And the Giants are able to turn this into a negative play, which sets up a 2nd and 12. Finally, the Giants get themselves in a good spot. But you
I don't know what, Eric, before you go, Dan, I'm sorry to cut you off. And I'm just wondering this. I'm wondering if the Vikings did not have Garrett Bradbury, how much their game plan would have changed, because they probably would not have asked that backup third string center to make that type of block.
Right.
And when Garrett Bradbury was asked to make those types of blocks, he failed a lot of the time. So I'm wondering if they would have had a more efficient approach if they actually had the third string in there, just because they would have avoided tasking their center with such a difficult responsibility.
That's a good point. They probably would have. It's crazy to think that they think that Bradbury can execute that, and they don't think the backup can. But reality is, against Dexter Lawrence, no one really. I mean, Jason Kelce might be able to. That's probably about it.
So. Yeah, I mean, the Olin Krutz of the world, they're not exactly in the NFL. We've seen guys like Ryan Kelly, who's perceived, and I don't watch a ton of Colts film, who's perceived as one of the better centers in the league, just lose miserably to Dexter Lawrence. It's not just the Chris Mustafas.
Kelce was basically the only center who's done well against Dexter Lawrence.
And it's funny, too, because I remember watching tape from like when we first started this podcast. Kelce really struggled against Dalvin Tomlinson. That was a player that I felt like gave Kelce a lot of trouble. So I'm interested to see how Kelce does in this high leverage spot coming up against Dexter Lawrence.
It's going to be one of the biggest matchups of the game. But here we have a 2nd and 12 situation here. Quarters coverage look from the Giants, as you can see at the top of the screen if you're watching. And you just get a phenomenal route run by TJ Hawkinson here, a stick and nod. And you also have, in addition to that, great anticipatory throw by Kirk Cousins under pressure. I thought this was one of the best plays of the game from Cousins, and obviously a great route by TJ Hawkinson.
Great route by TJ Hawkinson, and a great play call from Kevin O'Connell. Look, the Giants are going to run so many split safety looks, quarter type of coverage, a lot of quarters coverage when it's match principled. They have that safety read the release of the number 2 receiver. The number 2 receiver is TJ Hawkinson. This is an empty set. To the field side, the number 2 receiver is TJ Hawkinson. So with a stick and nod route, you're going to run up the field and then you're going to fake like you're going out. So if you're that safety reading TJ Hawkinson in that specific coverage, you're going to be like, okay, he's going out. That's not my responsibility anymore. And that's exactly kind of what happens. It looks like, it also looks like Julian Love might be just fading towards Justin Jefferson's side, but you can see how Darnay Holmes gets his eyes back on Kirk Cousins, doesn't even feel the fact that there's going to be a nod coming, which means he's going to break over the middle of the field in the post. And you're right, man. Kirk Cousins is getting hit by Tony Jefferson on this twist blitz. I really like the design. We'll go over that in a second. Gets hit, but he fires it, and he's wide open, TJ Hawkinson. Just Darnay Holmes was a little bit out of position and didn't anticipate it because he was looking at the quarterback.
Yep. And that's going to set up a 1st and 10 situation.
Let's look at this twist real quick as well for the YouTube audience. You can see Giants have a lot of defensive backs out there. You don't see one linebacker on the field. And watch Tony Jefferson, originally aligned in the B gap. He's just going to loop right around both of the slanting defensive linemen to get that free rush in on Kirk Cousins. Gotta love good scheming by Wink Martindale.
Really good scheming, and it's an immediate pressure. It's just a really good play by Cousins to not only slide to his left to reset the pocket for him and reset his passing lane, but then throw the anticipation. But here you have right after it a 1st and 10 situation. Giants come out with quarter look. A lot of defensive backs on the field. Vikings take advantage here by running with Dalvin Cook, and he picks up 6 yards. Kayvon Thibodeau plays this pretty well, but it's also just a good run by Cook.
Yeah, he gets off TJ Hawkinson's block pretty quickly, and he gets to the hip and is able to kind of make Dalvin Cook stumble. You know, Dalvin Cook's balance ends up being a really huge part of this football game, as we'll see a little bit later, on. But
I know the play you're talking about.
Solid play, though, from Kayvon Thibodeau still, like you said, 6-yard gain, though.
2nd and 4 after that. quick game action here from the Vikings out of 11. You're going to see a quick slant from against Adoree Jackson with Justin Jefferson. This is like with a receiver like Justin Jefferson, who some believe is the best in the NFL, and he very well may be. I just don't think this is possible for any corner to cover. Just look at his release off the line of scrimmage. That's what I focused on this play, Nick. I just think it's so filthy right there.
I mean, Adoree's right in his hip pocket. It's not like Adoree Jackson is really, he takes that one,
even with that
one key step, you see, and then
yep.
It's not like he really opens his hips. He already knows, okay, he's going inside, and then he's right on top of it. This is just Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson have such excellent timing and rhythm, and the second defender, the apex defender, is watching TJ Hawkinson, and he kind of matches him, so there's a throwing window, and it's just kind of a bang bang play, but Adoree Jackson's right there on top of it, right?
Yeah, he is. It's just this is an impossible play to stop, I think, with his connection from that quarterback to that receiver and that release off the line of scrimmage from Jefferson with that step. So is what it is. Creates a first down situation, first and goal. And here's the touchdown to KJ Osborne. You're going to see a little mesh over the middle. Jarrad Davis doesn't really play it all that well.
Nah, the Red Seas certainly part on this one. And this is just a mesh where Jarrad Davis sees TJ Hawkinson and then he feels Adam Thielen, but he should be passing Adam Thielen over to Fabian Moreau, but instead he sticks with Adam
right there.
Yeah, nobody's on him.
Got to pass that off.
Got to pass that off. Xavier McKinney is way too far off. He's not going to come down there. Like, he doesn't know that Jarrad Davis is going to blow this coverage. So this is definitely a bad look for Jarrad Davis. I'm wondering if Micah McFadden would have been in position, because that's something that he certainly struggled with for much of the season, but a lot of his struggles are near the sideline when he's in pursuit. I'm wondering if he would actually have been in position for this specific play.
I think he might have been. I think his struggles, like you said, are more with lateral quickness and speed. And that's not an example, but you never know. And obviously, I'm sure you could see Jarrad Davis at the end of that play kind of look back toward the two defensive backs in that area. There was some kind of miscommunication. I mean, that's kind of the deal you made with the devil, right? When you decided to start Jarrad Davis for the playoff game and make McFadden inactive, there was a chance there was going to be some communication breakdowns and things like that. And we saw it right there, result in a touchdown.
It does. I thought that was a bold move, and I'm not. I don't disagree with it, but to even make the kid inactive, like, okay, we're not even going to dress you just in case. Yeah, that's a bold.
That part
move.
of it was weird. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure they have their reasons for it, but I do kind of agree with you on that. It was a little weird to just make him inactive. At least have him in case of an injury or just in case like your bold move to put Jarrad Davis in didn't work out. Like like things were happening that were leading to big plays like that, but. It just shows the uncertainty right now at linebacker. I mean, they're not even putting them on the field. They're running 7 and 8 defensive back looks. This is Wink Martindale. They will be upgrading this position in the offseason. I don't care what anyone wants or thinks. Thankfully, enough people know they need to do it, and the Giants are one of those people that know that. So we'll get an upgrade there. It's not going to continue to look like this.
It better not.
Yeah, it can. It can. It's just you can't win. Like, it's tough to win like this. You can. They've been able to, but it's tough. Next drive is the 5th drive of the game. This one's this is the second half drive, their first one. It's an 8-play, 75-yard touchdown drive for the Vikings here. Starts in a 1st and 10 situation. You've just got a weak side run here by Dalvin Cook. It's going to be a 7-yard gain. I think you did a good job of pointing out in your notes, Nick. 57 does a pretty good job here, Jarrad Davis, because he's displaced at the second level by the offensive lineman, but he's able to kind of recollect himself and get himself back in the mix to make a tackle and avoid and prevent Dalvin Cook from making a cutback.
It's a weak side run in 12 personnel too. Double Y set to the boundary side. So they're running to the field side, trying to really abuse this B gap. And you can see how Ezra Cleveland gets a clean release up to Jalen Smith. But there's that cutback lane with Ed Ingram also getting a clean release up to Jarrad Davis. And look, Julian Love is way deep there because the Giants are running so many split field coverages. And he would be that alley defender if Jarrad Davis doesn't kind of recollect himself to make this tackle. So it's a pretty good play despite the fact that Ed Ingram was able to get hands on him by Jarrad Davis.
Yep. And that's going to set up a 2nd and 3 play that is similar in some ways to some of the stuff Kafka did earlier in the season, just a play action bootleg out of a double Y set designed to get the ball to Munt, and Cousins gets rid of it really fast and beats the Giants here for a 12-yard gain.
Yeah, Johnny Munt, the 3rd tight end here, with Herb Smith having an impact, and TJ Hawkinson, he makes his nice catch for 12 yards. Giants run a nickel blitz, too, on this play to the other side. You can see Nick McLeod, who's in press over Justin Jefferson, and the Giants decided to blitz that side. And look, now it's going to be on, I think that's Julian Love by himself on Justin Jefferson. So you didn't see a lot of that in this game. Giants try to get pressure, and they get I guess you could say they lost because of the tight end chip, even though it wasn't to the Justin Jefferson side. Gerard Davis also blitzes, as you can see.
Yeah, this is a good play by Cousins, I thought, on this one for sure. But next play is a 1st and 10 after that little 12-yard gain. And the Giants don't respond with base despite the Vikings going to a 12 personnel look. They do that play they ran a little bit earlier with a fake pass, and then they run the ball to Cook. But Dexter Lawrence wasn't having any of this, and it's just a 3-yard gain.
Yeah, when they did that last time, it was Jelly on the field, and now Jelly on the sideline. Dexter Lawrence like, nah, son, just closes that, man. That's what would have happened. This huge difference. And this is so consistent too. You rarely see Dexter Lawrence in a single block, even on double teams, just get blocked out of his gap, leading to a huge run, right? Like that just doesn't happen with Lawrence on the field.
Yep, you're exactly right about that. And that'll set up a 2nd and 7, cover 1 look. They're bracketing Justin Jefferson again. And they don't want to let him beat them. And they're going to try the slant anyway to Justin Jefferson. And you could just see this was one of the 2 plays in the game that really showed to me the difference having Xavier McKinney makes. Just his ability to break on this throw, get his hand in there, basically textbook coverage because it's not a pass interference, tip it up and almost allow his safety here, Julian Love, to make an interception. It was really close, dude. They came so close. I was hoping this was going to be ruled in our favor, but I think it was ultimately the correct call to be incomplete. But I just love this play from Xavier McKinney.
It's an excellent play from Xavier McKinney, and it's also the scheme. We're not going to allow 18 to beat us. So the Giants are in that quarters look pre-snap, and you're going to have kind of like a cover 3 rotation where you're not going to get Xavier McKinney to drop into a 4th. He's going to buzz down and watch where his eyes go, right to 18. If you're going to run a deep dig route, if you're going to run some sort of horizontal cross, I'm right here. So Adoree Jackson can play outside and off coverage, preventing a big play and also preventing any kind of comeback route or anything to the outside because you have Xavier McKinney. You have that help. And watch the transition. Just transitions, and then Xavier McKinney's like, okay, he's coming inside. Let me flash my eyes. Kirk Cousins is already rearing back. Xavier McKinney's in a position to make the interception. I actually think this ball, not the best decision to throw it with McKinney there, but this ball is thrown to the outside portions away from McKinney. He gets his hand in there, but it's almost catchable, even though it would have been really, really difficult. Definitely shouldn't have been thrown. But I love seeing the secondary be that together in their coverages and how they pass routes off. That's excellent defense right there.
And that's another
and this system they don't even do this either. They don't even run quarter a lot, Dan.
Yeah, they don't run. You're right about that. They do not run those types of those coverages where you need the communication to be so good on the back end. But it's good to see that despite the fact they don't have a lot of reps with it, when they do run it, they are on the same page. And I think a big part of that is having McKinney on the field.
And this is, I think I said cover 3 match before. I think this is more of a cover 1 buzz. But like it seems like this is a zone technique to the Justin Jefferson side. So it's just like a bracket type of coverage on that side. But you can see there's man coverage on the opposite side of the field, which a lot of defenses do.
And that's going to set up a 3rd and 7. Good opportunity for the Giants to get off the field, but they are unable to in this situation here. You got a great rep here from one of their best players, Dexter Lawrence, but ultimately the Vikings are able to hit the in-breaking outside slant to Hawkinson versus Landon Collins in a one-on-one matchup. And I thought it was interesting, Nick. This is a bigger picture thing, but later in the game, you saw, especially on that final drive and the one before it, they changed what they wanted to do. Like they ultimately ended up having McKinney match up against Hawkinson for those key plays because I think they adjusted to the fact that, this wasn't a great matchup for them with Hawkinson against Landon Collins.
Absolutely. I thought that was a really, really wise thing to do on that last drive. And we talk a lot about how Mike Kafka uses these stacks, right? This is to the field side, but still watch the release of the outside receiver, TJ Hawkinson. He follows right underneath Adam Thielen. He's going right mirroring Adam Thielen. That's going to force Landon Collins to work over the top, just in case that's an out route, which we saw in the red zone on that first drive. But instead, it's just opening up space to the middle of the field where Adoree Jackson, who's in the slot, is going to be cleared out by Justin Jefferson with the help over the top. That's just excellent scheming. Tip of the cap to Kevin O'Connell right there. And we can watch the end zone angle just to see Dexter Lawrence run through Ezra Cleveland. And this is a great individual rep, but at the same time, I know there's a lot of offensive line guys that would be like, look at the feet. And the feet get tangled up. Bradbury kind of trips Ezra Cleveland, which is one reason why this actually happened, this dominating looking.
Yeah. And something about your point before, it's like when you break it down like that, Nick, and when I watch it on the film, I do think that these teams that are not running what you just said, like bunch and stacked receivers, and are just because there still are teams that are running like the 2 outside boundary guys and the slot guy lined up like 5 yards off of him in the middle. I really do think it puts them at a massive disadvantage. It makes it so much easier to cover. This is a lot harder to cover. Like you said, Landon Collins has a tough responsibility here when Hawkinson runs right underneath Thielen here, because he has to respect the out. And on an inbreaker, he has to work over, like he has to work through traffic to get to the inbreaker, and he's at a massive disadvantage here. So I just feel like, generally speaking, NFL terms and offensive terms, like the teams that are running the more traditional offenses these days with just boundary guys and then the slot guy, it makes it much easier to defend.
Much easier to defend. And when, I mean, Cliff Kingsbury is no longer a coach, if that's who you're referring to, right? No, but
Garrett too. Like Jason Garrett did a lot of that as well.
Mike Kafka abused the stacks, right? He's been abusing the stacks basically since the last Minnesota game. It's been a big part of this passing offense. And when you're running against a man coverage look, as we see right here, it's very difficult for that defender to assume TJ Hawkinson. You can banjo it up, but you have to have really good communication. And on certain routes, it's not even great because Darnay Holmes is going to glue to that inside hip. He would have to really like do some kind of crazy turn to kind of clamp down on TJ Hawkinson, So it's
hard
just
to even run banjo there. Exactly.
Yeah, it's hard to defend, man. It's hard to defend. That's why really smart offensive minds are using it.
And if we go back to an offense like the one we had with Garrett, where we're just not doing stuff like this often, and that we're in a good spot right now with the coaching. We're lucky, but we were just in a really bad spot for like a long period of time. Yeah. So we need to be able to recognize sooner now, I think, as a franchise, because we recognized that watching the tape that Garrett was bad very early on. We wanted him gone within his first season, but Giants went back. They gave him another season. They used the argument that Daniel Jones needs continuity. By the way, we haven't brought that up, right, all year, but that's such a – remember, we were out on that argument from the beginning. Oh, no, this was a Gettleman argument. I got to give the kid – hold on. You got to give the kid a chance here. You got to give him the same coordinator for one season in a row. He hasn't had that. He went from Duke. It's like, well, this was just totally disproven before this, but now it was just ripped apart this year, right? Daniel Jones gets a brand new offensive coordinator, and it's the best thing ever for his game. It completely changes everything that he is as a quarterback. So it's like, all right, enough of that argument. I think that needs to be retired for good at this point. The continuity one, just get good coaching in. That's the focus here. Don't worry about the continuity factor. Get good coaches first and get good scheme first. And we need to be able to recognize as a franchise way faster than we did the last time with Jason Garrett.
Your Dave Gettleman just reminded me of like something from the 1920 film noir, right? Like, you see?
Extra, read all about it. You're right. I do a Boston accent, so I just go to like an old.
No, your Boston accent's not there. I'm glad that you go to the old guy part of it, which I respect. But I think you're right. And look, I understood the continuity argument. In theory, it makes sense. But when your offense is broken, continuity means shit. And I think we saw that, right, with Jason Garrett. And I think it was obvious. You're right about the good coaching. Good coaching isn't ubiquitous. But I think the Giants. Well, actually, I know the Giants have one right now. And I'm not just talking about Kafka and Wink, because they could go. This offseason, they could go. Yeah. Knocking on wood, hopefully it doesn't happen. But you still got the foundation in place with Brian Daboll. And I trust, just by the staff that's been assembled, Dan, I trust that Brian Daboll is going to find the right guy for the job. It's not going to be some sort of cronyism type of hire. It's going to be, we see the same thing alike. And if we don't, we can talk it out, right? And it's not going to be forcing square pegs into round holes, which I feel like has been the Giants' offenses for quite a while now. Like Brian Daboll has been around, bro. He's seen a ton of football, right? At college, in the NFL. This isn't like a young, up-and-coming coach. And he's not old either. He's just been around football, and he's seen so many different methods to success. So I have so much faith in this coaching staff, even if the Giants lose Kafka and Martindale, which would be, horrendous. It'd be devastating. But I have a lot of faith in Daboll to reinstitute the right people in place that can bring the Giants back to the playoffs.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. All right, let's get back into the tape here. We just went over that 3rd and 7 conversion, stack, hard to defend. Now we have 1st and 10 here, 21 personnel. Giants are going to respond with base this time, and this is one of the plays you mentioned earlier, Nick. This is great job by Kevin O'Connell here. This little post wheel route frees up the wheel, and man, is that wheel open.
That wheel is really open. And you're like, oh, what is Jared Davis doing in space? Look, nobody wants to see Jared Davis in space. But when you come out in this formation, you have 2 guys in the backfield. So you got to worry about the run, right? And you have those 2 safeties.
Look at the safety before the snap. He's like pointing to Davis, like, dude, get the hell out there. What's going on here? We can't just leave this guy wide open.
But on Davis is like, bro, I can't cover a wide receiver in space.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell? Like, that's a terrible spot for Gerard Davis to be in. But by switching to 21 personnel, Kevin O'Connell is forcing the Giants' hand to match with base instead of nickel. And when you're in base and you have 3 guys on the line of scrimmage and those 2 edge rushers, that's 5 guys allocated on the line of scrimmage. You just have 2 linebackers if you want to play split safety looks. So now it's Gerard Davis who has to assume that number 2 receiver. That's a terrible situation. I'd rather see Jalen Smith there, but even that would have been a terrible situation, more than likely, with that same end result. So Davis is just in a really tough spot, and that's exactly what Kevin O'Connell wanted. He runs a post wheel with that little hezzy route right there, a little hesitation, and look how wide open he is. He is so wide open up the sideline, Adam Thielen.
Yeah.
And Thielen's pissed because he thought he should have been a touchdown.
Yeah, good. Actually, a pretty good job by Love to close this out and prevent this from being a touchdown.
Yeah, Love's a smart player, but that's a terrible situation for the Giants defense to find themselves in. Base personnel with Gerard Davis over your number 2.
And that's exactly how Kevin O'Connell exploited that thing pretty easily. So good job by him. It's going to happen against good coordinators sometimes. So now you got a 1st and goal situation. 22 personnel here, bringing Ham back into the mix. And honestly, this is pretty damn well blocked by the Vikings here. Even Dexter Lawrence with a rare loss on a rep. This is basically like, I feel like we've probably had like 1 to 3 times this season we've even said he's lost a rep, but here he does lose this rep.
Yep, Ezra Cleveland gets the best of him. Help from Garrett Bradbury to stick him, and then you can see Dex's knee is on the ground. Ezra Cleveland just finishes him off, and Jalen Smith does a solid job kind of fighting off Garrett Bradbury. See right there, he stacks him, sheds him, but he kind of gets tripped up by Dexter Lawrence, and then he makes that hit. Dalvin Cook, very powerful run because Jalen Smith kind of gets carried a little bit, but solid overall play from 54.
Yep. I agree with that. And that sets up a 2nd and goal here. And you're just going to see a big miscommunication from the Giants and ultimately 3 people in the area of Justin Jefferson and nobody in the area of Irv Smith for the easy
Yeah, we're going to
touchdown.
see that right here. It's a touchdown to Irv Smith, whose first healthy game back. You see how the Vikings are using tempo. Giants are scrambling. And who's in the backfield? It's Justin Jefferson. You put Justin Jefferson in the backfield and then you use tempo. So the Giants have no way to get to their checks, right? They have no way to really know exactly what's going on, who has who, where's Adoree Jackson going to align. And then Irv Smith just runs the corner and everybody takes Justin Jefferson because the Giants aren't on the same page.
Yeah, and that's just going to happen sometimes when you face tempo, when you face a player like Justin Jefferson. So many resources need to go in his direction there. But ultimately, it's a play the Giants definitely wish they could have back.
Oh, 100%. But, sometimes it's going to happen. And like we said several times, Kevin O'Connell's a good offensive coach.
Yeah, he's a damn good coach. And so things like that happen against good coaches. We'll roll into the 6th drive here. This was a 12-play, 56-yard drive that ended in a field goal. The Giants, again, got a little bit lucky here with that false start on 3rd and 1, I believe it was, which forced the Vikings to decide to play a field goal. But at the same time, they also made a couple really good plays here on the series. So we'll start out with the 1st 10 here. And you'll kind of see just the attention that Justin Jefferson gets here. Like, this is a rare cover 1 look from the Giants with only a middle field closed, with a middle field closed look. And yet all the focus is on not letting Justin Jefferson beat him. So what happens? It does open up a little bit of a void in the middle of the field for Adam Thielen.
It's cover 1. So instead of having Gerard Davis in man coverage, they're going to actually bring Julian Love down in the box and have him assume Johnny Munt. As you'll see on the play action rollout, 20 matches 86. It's a bunch of defensive backs who are going to be in coverage, but Moreau kind of gets beat by Adam Thielen on this deep dig route a little bit, even though he's in solid coverage. That's solid, I'll say, maybe adequate, but ends up being a 1st down.
Yep, and that leads to a 1st and 10 situation. They go back into their 22 personnel with Ham on the field, and they're just going to run a little pitch out here. And I thought this was the play I was referencing earlier, by the way, Nick, in the preview. This is the type of stuff I like to see from a linebacker here. Jared Davis, I like the way he played this, and I thought he did a good job preventing this from being a bigger run.
The last play was 21 personnel, but now it's 22. So you have 2 linebackers. So it's a double Y set in I formation, and the Giants come out in base, and you're right. Gerard Davis sheds Ezra Cleveland, gets outside to the numbers to just at least trip up Dalvin Cook.
Right.
And
that's all I want. I just want making contact with these runners sometimes.
And Kayvon Thibodeau, man, he's the edge rusher. He's just expanding outward, trying to contain. He has 2 blockers who are on him, and he works through. And I'm wondering if he was going to be able to make this tackle. Maybe not, because CJ Ham is there to kind of throw that block on him. But that just kind of goes to show that Gerard Davis this is a pretty damn good rep, especially since he had to work through contact from a blocker who got up there really, really quickly.
Exactly. That's a great rep from Davis. If you're looking for his best rep of the game, to me, this is that one. And he'll set up a 2nd and 6 situation. They're still in 22 here, so very heavy personnel. They're going to run a quick out hitch here to Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, and Adoree Jackson's just right on top of him to make this tackle.
Yeah, this is the difference where you look at some of our past games without Jackson, we don't have corners who are coming up that fast and making that tackle.
Especially from that kind of depth,
Leverage.
right?
Yep.
Yeah, he's off, but he realizes it really quick. Look how quick Adoree Jackson clicks and closes. What I mean by clicks is he's clicking right there, and then he's closing with and driving through the receiver to mitigate any kind of yak.
Exactly. Well said. And that'll set up a 3rd and 2 situation here. Chance for the Giants to get off the field here, but they're ultimately unable to. I thought this was played pretty well by the Giants defense, and they got some pressure, but a check down here is enough to get 5 yards on the first down.
Yeah, you have Leonard Williams, man, and Dexter Lawrence.
Yeah.
Dexter Lawrence gets double teamed. That isolates, and this is why it's excellent to have both of these guys. It isolates Leonard Williams in a one-on-one situation against Ed Ingram, and Leonard Williams just hits him with a violent swim move and then contacts Cousins, but nobody accounted for Dalvin Cook in the flat because Tony Jefferson kind of dropped him to death.
Yep. And that's something how often have we seen that, right? Like the chip and release guy just doesn't get accounted for, whether it's a tight end or a running back. That's something I think is schematic. I don't know if that's the play. Like, I guess Jefferson, that's his assignment.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he has to drop the depth just in case there's any kind of crossing routes from Justin Jefferson or any of those other players. He's not going to play close to the line of scrimmage. That was a 3rd and 2, so it's hard to stop that if you're not going to get the pressure. Yeah. But this is such a good play. This is a 1st and 10. Giants come out in nickel, 11 personnel, and I'm watching this, the deep post to Justin Jefferson. We're watching it from this angle because watch the quarters look and just see how well Xavier McKinney plays. It should have been OPI on Justin Jefferson, in my opinion, but that is just 100%. Phenomenal technique. He just knows exactly what's coming.
OPI.
He works.
Sorry, go ahead.
He works right into the chest of Justin Jefferson, doesn't contact him illegally or anything like that. He has every right for that football, just like Justin Jefferson does.
Right.
And you also have Adoree Jackson, who is outside of him. This is excellent nickel quarters in terms of coverage look right here. And I love the fact that we were able to see it from this angle. Good job to the guy that we just criticized last night.
Yeah, he played that so freaking well.
Talking about the camera guy, though.
Oh, the alternating camera did a better job on the defensive film. But yeah, that's the type of play right there. If they don't have Xavier McKinney on for this play, that ain't happening. That might even be a touchdown.
Dude, that's excellent technique from Xavier McKinney. This is like you said,
you said it. He has every right to that space. Like he cuts off Jefferson's route with his body, but he has every right. He beats him to that spot, and by the rule, he has every right to that spot.
It's insane how well executed that is. Like this is why Xavier McKinney is a superstar, and he can be a superstar. He might not have the plays to back it up, but I think it's well within his range of outcomes. Similar to what we said about Dexter Lawrence in the past, Xavier McKinney has that same range of outcomes. It's just he needs to avoid going on ATVs and things like that.
Yeah, of course. So that was the 1st and 10. It'll set up a 2nd and 10 situation here. And this was a really good play for the Giants. They had a nice, well-timed run blitz here with Jalen Smith, who gets in there and makes a big stop and helps with a few other players make a big stop for a loss of 2. Set up a 3rd and 13.
Yeah, this is an excellent run blitz right to the B gap. Because look, man, like
loss of 3. My bad.
This is another halfback draw. You can see how Kirk Cousins acts like he's going to pass. Handoff. And it looks like Ed Ingram was going to do some kind of kick slide to get to that hole, but he contacts Ezra Cleveland because Ryder Anderson did a good job penetrating, and no one ever was able to get to the B gap to take the blitzing Jalen Smith.
And that sets up a 3rd and 13. This was a good spot for the Giants to get off the field. And they kind of get what they want here, I guess, ultimately here. They have a 7-man coverage here. They're kind of rotating after the snap into a cover 1 type of look with one safety in the middle. They got the bracket safety with the robber. It plays well, but ultimately I thought Cousins did a good job of just finding something that gave them a chance to, if they want to go for a 4th and 2, to convert a 4th and 2. And it's 11 yards to Osborne.
I also just love this from Kevin O'Connell's perspective because focusing on Justin Jefferson's route. Remember what we just went over a couple drives ago when Julian Love in a cover 1 look assumed that buzz robber type of role, spying the inside portions of Justin Jefferson. Well, Justin Jefferson runs inside like he's going to run a post. And what happened the last time he did that? Adoree Jackson kind of faded a little bit, right? Like kind of took the acceleration off and kind of faded away. This time, Adoree Jackson kind of does that, but Kevin O'Connell tells Justin Jefferson to run back to the outside to kind of work into Adoree Jackson's blind spot. He's open there for Justin Jefferson and Kirk Cousins, he's open. And that's a nice adjustment off of a cover, off the same play that we saw before where the Giants ran cover one and they were taking away the inside portions of the field. So I just like that from an X's and O's standpoint. But you're right. KJ Osborne, man, that's a good adjustment by the kid over the middle of the field. Darnay Holmes, he's all over him. It's just a really nice play by Osborne. Too bad a little bit later in the game, he doesn't really make that same type of play in a similar situation on a pass thrown a little bit behind him.
And now that's going to set up a 4th and 2 situation where the Vikings opt to go for it instead of try to maybe punt or kick a field goal. At the 45, we expect that to be a go for it situations. And they're able to pull this one off here. It's a good play by the Vikings. The Giants are kind of playing heavy to Justin Jefferson, quick hitting screen. That's what you expect there. And what do? You use the player, TJ Hawkinson, who is assumed to be blocking for this screen, and you just run him on kind of like a wheel route. And what's going to happen? He's wide open.
Yeah, this is the second time in the last 2 drives that the Giants were punished for overplaying Justin Jefferson. Because you can see Xavier McKinney, who's over the top of TJ Hawkinson. His eyes go to Justin Jefferson. He sees that and he attempts to jump it for a pick six. That's what he's thinking. But it was all a ruse and it was a wheel route. Julian Love, I feel like every game the Giants play the Vikings, Julian Love is killing TJ Hawkinson. Remember last game? Didn't he like submarine him?
Yes, he did.
He submarined him. Now he's covering all the way from the middle of the field, man. He closes with quick and he just nails TJ Hawkinson. But still, man, this is a nice conversion on a 4th and 2, 18-yard gain.
And then the Vikings are going to come back and run a pass, a quick hitting pass to Dalvin Cook here. And you get it. This is one of the plays you were mentioning before. Just an absolutely great read by Darnay Holmes on this design screen to blow it up for a loss of 3.
Darnay Holmes made so many low-key, huge plays in this game, and this is definitely one of them. He just read it, diagnosed it. And look, the Vikings like to use Dalvin Cook on screens when they're nearing the red zone, when they're in the red zone, and Darnay Holmes was right on top of it, man. Excellent, excellent job by him.
Excellent job by Darnay Holmes to set up a 2nd and 13 situation here. And on the 2nd and 13, right after this big 3-yard loss, you're going to get a twist up front from the Giants. They're guessing pass here. And this was the play you referenced earlier, like one of those plays where it could have gone a little bit differently. Tony Jefferson spins Dalvin Cook around. And if Dalvin Cook regains his balance there, it's possible he maybe even houses this ball for a touchdown. Instead, he cannot regain his balance, trips up, and it sets up a 3rd and 9.
Yeah, I'm wondering, did anybody contact him after this, or was it because the spinorama right there? I don't think he's contacted by any offensive lineman. He just loses his balance. And dude, that literally could be the difference in the game. It really could. Like just Tony Jefferson's fingertips right there, spinning Dalvin Cook and then him not being able to collect himself. Like I don't think a fully capable Dalvin Cook is getting tracked down by Leonard Williams. And when you watch it from this view, you can see there's offensive linemen in space and really no Giants because the safety kind of takes a bad angle, a shallow angle coming down on this. And this could have easily went for 6. It's a huge moment in the game. You see Pinnock take that angle. Like if Dalvin Cook maintains his balance, he has 71 running in space with TJ Hawkinson there. And the closest Giant is Darnay Holmes and then a guy on the goal line with a wide receiver up in that direction. Like, man, that's going to be tough, bro. So that's a huge stop by Tony Jefferson, even though he didn't really get the tackle, but I guess he kind of did.
Yep. I think you nailed that. And that sets up the 3rd and 9 situation where we're going to see the Vikings connect with Hawkinson on an 8-yard little inbreaker over the middle. I thought it was great tackling by the Giants at the end to kind of prevent him from getting that extra yard or 2 and converting the 1st down, which ultimately at the time didn't seem to be that big of a deal because instead of a 4th and 1, the Vikings were going to go for it. And I think they were going to convert it. But after that false start, it goes to 4th and 6 and they opt for the field goal and it ends up making a massive difference in this game.
Huge false start by Christian Darrisaw. And you're right. Who's in coverage right here on TJ Hawkinson? Who's in man? That's Xavier McKinney. We're going to see that a little bit later on in the game too. Good strength by Tony Jefferson to force that tackle though. I didn't think he had it though either. Because then initially they ruled that he had it on the field. I was like, I don't know. I want to see that again. And that's another thing that ended up going really well for the Giants.
True. And that one rightfully so, I think. And that's going to set up the Giants then go right down. So it's 24-24. Giants score the touchdown right away, answer 31-24. And then on the 7th drive, they force a 3 and out. It was a really good series for the Giants here to get off the field. This was probably their best series because they got him into 3rd and long. And on the 3rd and long, there really wasn't anywhere to go with the football either. So it'll start here with another great play by Darnay Holmes, who now has had 2 really game-changing plays on back-to-back series. They're going to try to run the flare. They think they have the numbers based on the pre-snap leverage, but Holmes does a great job to say, no, you don't have this, and I'm not going to get fooled by this, and gets himself in the position to stop Cook here for a loss of 4.
You can see the screen, the boundary screen to Justin Jefferson. See the guys kick out, but Kirk Cousins opts to throw the flare once again. Adam Thielen's setting outside this time because remember last time Darnay Holmes forced Dalvin Cook to cut back inside, right? So you see Adam Thielen set inside. So Darnay Holmes like, check that. I'm just going to undercut you. And he does, and he presents his chest right into Dalvin Cook. Like, that's just a great play from number 30.
Yeah, unbelievable play from Holmes. Another unsung play by him. 2nd and 14. I love this call from Kevin O'Connell. You just ran a flare. Why not come back to something similar with a screen? I thought if Kayvon Thibodeaux, we'll talk about this play by Thibodeaux because it's an incredible combination of mental processing and athleticism. Both need to be in play for him to be the one who makes the play after he literally is slanting to the inside on a pass rush, but reads it so well and processes so fast that he understands the screen. But if he doesn't process this fast and is still just like rushing upfield, I think that Hockenson will have time to let that block set up. And then he just cuts it inside, plants, and he's going to get the first down at minimum here. So this is almost like a game-changing play from Kayvon Thibodeaux.
It's one of those unsung plays, man. And we've kind of said unsung, I think, like 3 or 4 times. But there were plenty of plays like this in the game that, hey, if it just went a little bit differently, if one player did something so small that maybe we wouldn't even have we didn't even realize the first time we watched it how important it was, like this Kayvon Thibodeaux play. Right. It could have changed the entire outcome of the game. Like he presses into the guard, Kayvon Thibodeaux. Like he's away from the play. Yeah. And he's able to realize exactly what the hell is going on because I think he reads how the center crosses his face. You can see how Garrett Bradbury crosses his face. I think you see how he turns his head. He's like, oh, this is going to be a screen to that freaking tight end who's eligible. And look at that hustle from the guy who never hustled in college, apparently, man. Like he is just on TJ Hockenson. And you're right, dude, because Bradbury's going to get into space. He's
right there, right? Like if just imagine 5 is not in this play here because he's still rushing the passer. Like you said, Bradbury's picking off that Giants defender. Then what? Like what's left to stop Hockenson here?
I don't know. Hockenson, you can see he's under pressure because Kayvon Thibodeaux is right on his ass. Like that's just a great play from Kayvon Thibodeaux, a great hustle. And like you said, the mental process. And I want to see it from this angle to see. I think it might be like right there is where he's like, wait, why'd that center cross my? Oh, okay. That's what's going on here.
And it's so fast for him to turn around immediately and then go try to make the play. It's not like he's like thinking about it and pausing and being like, wait a second. He just knows. He's able to recognize that and understand it.
Exactly. And Tony Jefferson does a good job working to the outside shoulder to possibly force a cutback, but that never even happened because of Kayvon Thibodeaux.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
And there's the gritty.
Yep. And so now it's a 3rd and 11 situation here. Cover 3 look before the snap from the Giants, but there's also going to be a shade toward the Justin Jefferson side because it's Justin Jefferson. And you're just going to have great pressure from Dexter Lawrence here to force Kirk Cousins into just throwing this ball incomplete. There's just nothing open here. There's nowhere to go with the football. Just a phenomenal win for the Giants defense all around.
Everybody drops to a depth at the second level, and then you could see how Julian Love is just bailing from the outside the hash all the way to the other hash, just in case to play inside coverage on Justin Jefferson, who was being assumed by Adoree Jackson on the opposite side. You can see Cousins thinks about throwing it that way, but he didn't love the fact that Julian Love was over there giving inside help to Adoree Jackson. Let's watch Dexter Lawrence get some pressure, as Dexter Lawrence is one to do. Just kind of bench presses Garrett Bradbury, and then Kirk Cousins gets hit. Dalvin Cook doesn't catch it.
Exactly. And so that sets up the 8th drive, the final drive of the game for the Vikings. The Giants make the stop. Obviously, it didn't start out great with that roughing the passer, but ultimately they did a great job to bog down. So we're going to run through these final 6 plays. It's 39 yards with a turnover on downs. They started with just under 3 minutes on the clock. The 1st and 10 play here is a really good play from Dane Belton here, who was in the game due to an injury to Jason Pinnock. Had to be, as a rookie who's getting the call late in the game, and he's able to stop this underneath throw for 6 yards. This is a quarters look, so they're keeping everything in front, but it still requires good tackling, good sound tackling, and that's what Belton gives them here.
Yeah, he's not in the quarters responsibility either. He's the middle hook defender, just dropping, and he just stays right on top of TJ Hockenson. Look, if you want to catch the football for a couple yards, I'm going to tackle you right away, and the rookie did that.
Exactly. And that sets up a 2nd and 4 where we get the roughing the passer. We're not going to show that, but it was a roughing the passer. We don't need to show that. We opted, I had it up. I was going to send it to Nick to put up. And I was just like, you know what? I don't want to see this atrocity again. It's just going to tilt me all over again because I got so angry watching that play because it obviously should have never been roughing the passer. And I am the type of person who, if the Vikings had gone down unscored, I would have been furious about that call for a long, long time. I hate game-changing calls by these stupid refs, these old-ass refs who can't see the game right. It's so fast. They're making mistakes all the time. that was one of them. And I'm happy it ultimately didn't end up mattering. But we'll fast forward to this 1st and 10 here. It's an empty stack. You get the slant to Hawkinson. This is just a good pitch and catch for 13 yards by the Vikings.
Yeah, very good pitch and catch for 13 yards. You can see how Hawkinson sets to the inside, works around with the drag route, who just kind of sits against zone coverage, fields his zone coverage, just sit. TJ Hawkinson kind of crosses into that throwing window, and this is a contested catch because I felt like Darnay Holmes was in good position to knock the ball away, but TJ Hawkinson is a damn good tight end, as Giant fans are finding out. This ends up going for a nice game.
Yep, and that sets up the next play here, which is a 1st and 10 situation. You're going to have looks like a cover 1 look with a 4-man rush as the Giants rotate to just that single high look, and they try to check down here to Dalvin Cook. This is one of the, I put out like my 5 or 6 biggest, unsung hero plays of the game. This one wasn't on it, but when I rewatched the film, Nick, I was like, you know what? I want to give some props here to Dane Belton here, because I thought he did a great job of closing here, and I thought he did a great job of kind of understanding the space that he had, right? Like toward the space that the runner, or the receiver, I should say, Dalvin Cook here, had toward the sideline, and what he wanted to do here. Dalvin Cook wants to cut this back to the middle of the field, and Dane Belton takes that away while fully understanding that even if he takes that away and leaves himself vulnerable toward the sideline, there's just not really enough space for Dalvin Cook to make that move and then still get up the sideline. That's basically exactly what happens, right? Like Cook stabs towards the inside, Belton plays the inside, and then he goes outside, and he does kind of beat Belton, but at the same time, at that point, he's too tight to the sideline and can't stay in bounds.
Yeah, that's a good execution from Dane Belton. You can see the athletic ability of Dalvin Cook too, just how he kind of jukes inside and then is able to explode out of that break, but Belton's able to get enough of him to force him out of bounds. This is a middle of the field close, cover 3 type of look. You can see how Xavier McKinney buzzes down towards the Adam Thielen side, looking at TJ Hawkinson to see if TJ Hawkinson is going to run anything. And then up top, you have Justin Jefferson just against Adoree Jackson with inside help from the curl flat if he's there. And then obviously the safety over the top, flashing eyes in that direction.
Exactly. And so that's going to set up a 2nd and 10 situation here. And it's 11. We're going to see a cover 3 look here. And you're just going to get a good example of like the impact that somebody like Dexter Lawrence makes on this game. His pressure here forces Kirk Cousins to get rid of the football and to a spot that he doesn't probably want to go to, KJ Osborne. And maybe he does want to go here, but maybe he wants to get this ball out a little bit faster. I don't know, but it's another great underrated play here by Cordell Flott in this game to get his hand in there and force the incompletion.
Yeah, Flott didn't play really at all in this entire game, and he's able to get on the football field. And you can see how he's undercutting KJ Osborne there. This is a difficult play in man coverage to cover. This is cover 1 right here, and he has to assume that, or attach, I should say, to that hip. And you can see how I feel like that's good athletic ability just to close with there, because it looks like there's going to be a lot more separation than there was, and he's able to get kind of underneath. And this throw, as we'll see in the end zone angle, Dan, it's not the best throw, and it was catchable still. But I think a lot of credit deserves to go to Cordell Flott to just get his hand and disrupt the pass. I don't think this is a PBU per se, but it's just a disruption.
Yeah,
we'll see it.
I think that's a fair way to say it.
Like he's right there, and this ball, if it was put out maybe a little bit more, I think it was caught. But you see how Osborne has to slow up, and then it's a little bit behind, and it hits him in the chest, and then it just not secured because Flott gets his hand in there. But I don't know if the ball ever hit Flott's hand. It kind of went high, but it's still the disruption that got it. I think he deserves a PBU. Freaking good job.
Give him a PBU. Give him the PBU anyway.
Give him that PBU. And look at Dexter Lawrence just working against Ezra Cleveland, just working to the half, man.
It impacts the timing, and you're going to see it on the 4th down play. We talked about it earlier.
I think we missed the 2nd and 10 too. So let's watch that.
Was the Cook dump off?
Was the Cook dump off?
We might have missed the 1st and 10 here.
Okay.
Yeah, we broke this one down with Belton.
I didn't think we saw it from the end zone angle, and the only reason I bring it up is because Dexter Lawrence. I wanted to highlight
3 plays in a row for F's sake. That's insane. Like, look at this stuff. It's almost like there's no one blocking him. It almost feels like.
Yeah, I wanted to just highlight that specific play because I know we didn't show it from that angle. It's insane. That's what forces the check down. And then we can get to the last play of the game, though, man. This 4th and 8, this dump off
another
TJ
play by Lawrence to force this check down.
Yeah, let's watch it from this angle first, and then we'll see. Just Dexter Lawrence, man, is just absolutely insane. And this is 2 plays now in a row that the Giants are running cover 1, 3rd and 8, right. 4th and 8. You can see cover 1, it's man coverage. You're going to have 2 sets of eyes on Justin Jefferson with Love down in the box, just like we saw a little bit earlier. You could see Adoree Jackson and Trail kind of underneath that underneath the hip of Justin Jefferson, just in case he runs that 7 route, which it's exactly what he runs. And you can see Adoree Jackson's all over him. So that's processed right at this point by Kirk Cousins. He knows he can't go to Justin Jefferson, and there's no one else to that side of the field. He knows he has to get rid of the football. The only place he can really go is TJ Hawkinson, man. I know we made fun of him a little bit. And, I get it. Like, no one wants to check down on a 4th and 8. That's a terrible situation. But what else could he have really done if his eyes were in that direction and he was hoping to have 18? Just throw it up, I guess, to 18. But 18
he had more time and there was no pressure. I think he could have flipped his eyes back to the other side of the field. And like I was saying earlier, hit Osborne. It's not like he's wide open, but at the same time, it's a play that he can make. But he doesn't have that time because Dexter Lawrence is literally right in his face. And that's what he said after the game too. And you can see it right there from the end zone angle. Like, what can he do in this situation? He's looking to one half of the field. He's about to get a sacked. The one route that he wanted to go to Jefferson is you can't throw that ball, right? That's going to get intercepted. And some people have been like, well, you could say the same thing about the 4th and 18 play against the Bills earlier this year with the Vikings, where he didn't have a great look to Jefferson. He just chucked it up and let Jefferson make a play. And I think that's a fair case that you can make. Like, screw everything you're taught as a quarterback here. Just kind of chuck that up in the direction of Jefferson and hope he makes a play on it, or you get lucky and you get a pass interference and it's still better than a check down. And that I actually can't understand. But in the moment, like when you're about to take a sack and you're just like, do I just chuck this up into 3 white defenders or do I just try to hope my tight end can win a one-on-one matchup? It's close. I can see both logic behind both decisions,
especially since TJ Hawkinson has kind of burned the Giants throughout 2 matchups in these similar types of situations. But I completely understand what the other people say. But look at this point, man. You have 3 defenders at least in the area of Justin Jefferson when TJ Hawkinson is catching the football. It's that KJ Osborne out of the stack to the field side as the number 2 receiver, something that struggles against man coverage, as we went over a little bit before. He's open against Cordell Flott, but Dexter Lawrence being Dexter Lawrence just prevents Kirk Cousins from ever getting there.
Yep, and that's it, and that's the game. And the Giants are able to rally to the ball. Or, you can see they make the tackle. Game over. Giants win. Awesome. We're moving on to the divisional round. So let's wrap this thing up with some superlatives, Nick. And I want to start with the highest effort player that you saw on film.
It's hard not to go with Dexter Lawrence. So I kind of want to take him out of it. Because he's the best. You
have to go with the best answer. No. If that's the answer, you gotta go.
It's Dexter Lawrence then.
But we got it. I want you to do that because I am eventually, once the season's over, going to tally these all up, and I want it to be accurate to what we saw on film instead of just like, we don't want to give everything to one guy. So if he deserves everything, you got to get everything. So he is also my highest effort player. There are other players like Darnay Holmes, who I'm about to put in another category. I can see you make a case for, like, even like Xavier McKinney and Julian Love have playing with high effort. A lot of these guys are playing with high effort, honestly. But the fact that Dexter Lawrence is able to put together a series like that when they got to have it at the end of a game after already playing basically every snap at 345 pounds, there's just no one else who can deserve that. So let's move forward to the unsung hero on defense of the game.
Yeah, it's Darnay
player. Same thing. Yep, go ahead.
Darnay Holmes.
100%. Blowing up those screens changed the game in a lot of different ways. So he's also my pick as well. So let's
especially since he's a player, Dan, that like I don't think we're mean to. I feel like, he's not the best in coverage and he's not really thought of too highly among like Giant fans. But I don't think it's crazy to say if the Giants didn't have Darnay Holmes in this game, they might not have won. That's how much of an impact some of those plays had. On first down, blowing up plays for 4-yard losses, for 3-yard losses that lead to punts. That absolutely just takes the football and deflates it from Kevin O'Connell's grasp. So like Darnay Holmes was huge in this game.
I think that's 100% fair and a good, accurate assessment of what he was able to offer in this game. Let's turn it over to the best player on film. This one, though, obviously not much of a surprise.
Yeah, it has to be Jason Pinnock. No. Nah, Dexter Lawrence was an absolute stud, man. It's crazy, dude. Like we're talking about somebody who could potentially next year be in like defensive player of the year conversations, knocking on wood if he remains healthy and he continues playing at this level, especially if he takes it to another level, which is kind of just wild to think at this point.
Yeah, look, he had 29 pressures this year, which was 21 more than anyone else who played his position. Like that
from
alone,
the A gap. From the A
gap. Yeah, when lined up over center. That alone could probably put him in the discussion for defensive player of the year. But I think when you watch the tape, you can just see he's just so dominant every single week. And that, deserves the credit. And I think he's probably, if I had to say just based on the tape, who's been the best Giants player all year either side of the ball, I would take him over Andrew Thomas.
I think you're right. I mean, he
Yeah.
had 70 pressures, including this matchup, 70 pressures on the season as an A gap
As in, yeah,
nose
nose.
tackle.
Yeah. It's absurd.
That doesn't happen, man. That just doesn't
No.
happen that often.
Let's wrap this thing up with a pass rush grade 1 through 10 and then a run defense grade. Let's start with the pass rush grade 1 through 10.
Pass rush grade, look, Dexter Lawrence himself deserves like a 20, right? But I felt like you didn't get any sacks in the game. But that's also because I feel like the approach that the Vikings were utilizing and how Wink Martindale was calling his defense. He didn't blitz a lot. There wasn't a lot of 7 guys up on the line of scrimmage because you had so many guys allocated towards split safety looks. So that's one reason why we didn't get the sack numbers, but we saw a quick passing game. Kirk Cousins was trying to get the football out of his hand because Leonard Williams and Dexter Lawrence were getting pressures. So I'm going to go with a 7, just a flat 7.
I think that's fair. Don't love flat numbers. Always think you should add a decimal, but I will go with
But I don't
7.
feel like you should add a decimal if you think it's a 7, right?
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. There could be some flat numbers, so we'll give it to you. I think you won that argument. I'll go 7.4 here, like kind of in that 75 percentile type range. I love what Dexter Lawrence did. I like a lot what Leonard Williams did as a pass rusher in this game. Wasn't the best game pass rushing outside of those two, but like you said, part of that is the context. They didn't blitz a lot in this game, so you're not going to get a lot of sacks and pressures if you're not blitzing. But even so, part of the reason I have such a high grade, despite only blitzing, 22% of the time, they're able to pressure Cousins 45% of the time. So almost double those snaps. I think it was 45.4. So that to me alone shows that it should be a decently high number. Okay. How about run defense grade? Let's wrap up there.
Run defense, look, again, it wasn't as good as probably we would like, and this isn't a power gap team, but I think a lot of that was also from a scheme standpoint and how the Giants played it and the Giants personnel. So considering all of those factors, I'm not going to be as low as maybe some might suggest. I'm going to go with a 6.4.
I think that's fair. I'm going like 5.5 range for me. 5.5 is the number I'll go with. I think the context has to be considered. Like, how many times are Giants using 7 defensive backs on the field? Like, it's going to be hard to stop the run when you have that kind of personnel package in. So with that said, though, there were still a lot of situations where I just felt like the Vikings were able to get what they want in the run game. And that's just kind of how it's going to be. We know what we got there in this run defense until next year when we upgrade the personnel. So that's it for the Giants Big Blue Banter Defensive Film Podcast, the wildcard round. Keep it locked and loaded on the Big Blue Banter Podcast. More content coming your way. We already previewed a bunch of it yesterday, but keep it loaded. Maybe a mailbag we'll throw in there too, like end of the week type thing. We'll discuss that. We'll see where we're both at with everything else going on in our lives. But we're definitely going to do a State of the Giants type preview Q&A with the entertainer like we did last week. We're definitely going to do a preview podcast, and we're still working on who we're going to bring on for that. So those are things that will be locked and loaded for sure coming up the rest of the week. Thank you. Have a good rest of your week, and happy birthday, Nick.
Thanks, buddy.
Yeah. And make sure somebody sings you the birthday song tonight.
Not really about it, Yeah, I'm okay. Now, but let's go Giants, man. This is exciting time.
It really is. Thanks again for everyone supporting us as well.